p.m. It is Tuesday, June the 7th, and I'm going to call this special city council meeting to order. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell,
Here.
Rizo,
He's here.
Ellison.
He's also here.
Flores Kale.
Here.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Parsley.
Here.
Tobias.
Here. All right, 7 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, citizen comments. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward? Seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. It's now closed. Next up, executive session. I don't even have it to read, so Councilor Tobias, you want to grab it?
Yes, sir, I got it. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive sessions from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting. The City Council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics. Number 1, pending or contemplating litigation or to seek the advice of the city attorney pursuant to the section 551071, Green Trails HOA, Combined Emergency Communication Center, cause number 181282, Jesse Espinosa versus the City of Kyle, Texas, in the 22nd Judiciary District, Hays County, Texas, SOAH docket 407-18-3098 F5, Jesus Espinosa versus Kyle Police Department before the State Office of Administrative Hearings. Cause number 220873, the State of Texas, EXRL 1200 South Old Stagecoach Road, LLC versus the City of Kyle, Texas. Non-conforming issues and structures. 2, possible purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate pursuant to Section 551072, Green Trails HOA. Number 3, personal matters pursuant to Section 551074. And number 4, convene into executive session pursuant to the section of 551087 Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding the offer of economic incentives to one or more business prospects that the city seeks to have, locate, stay, or expand in or near the city. Project Fire Engine Red, Project Tropical Green, Project French Lime, Project Goldfish, Project Titanium, Project Bullseye, and Project MBA. And number 2, take actions on items discussed in executive session. And 4, be considered. Number 4, be considered possible action. Number 3, consider the possible action to approve the Chapter 380 agreement with the Project Fire Engine Red. We're in executive session.
All right, good evening, everyone. The time is 7:03 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting back to order. There was no action taken during executive session. There will be action taken now. I'd like to make a motion to approve a Chapter 380 Economic Development Incentive for Alliance Industrial. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. Motion carries 6-0. Motion to adjourn. All right, we are adjourned. I'm going to wait 60 seconds, let the tapes roll over, and then we'll start our regular meeting. Don't know. All right, good evening, everyone. The day is Tuesday, June the 7th, time 7:04 p.m., and I'm going to call this regularly scheduled city council meeting to order. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell,
Here.
Rizo, Ellison,
Present.
Flores Kale,
Here.
Bradshaw,
Here.
Parsley. Here. Tobias.
Here.
All right, 6 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, approval of the minutes.
Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes for City Council special meeting May 3rd, regular meeting for the same date, and special city meeting for May 12th, 2022.
A motion by Councilmember Tobias, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale, that we approve the minutes for May 3rd, and May 12th. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next up, citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit that to either myself or the city secretary. I have two who have signed up so far. First up, Christopher Calkins.
Mayor, City Council members, City of Kyle, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm from Kyle Ambets, and I'm first vice. My commander's here with us tonight. We do a lot for the community and wanted to share a little something with you all tonight. Ambets Post 115 would like to invite the citizens of Kyle and the City Kyle Council to our first annual People's Walk. It will be June 12th with registration starting at 8 a.m. and closing at 10 a.m. There will be a safety briefing by CERTs at the start, and along the way there will be rest stops for water and fruit. At the rest stops, walkers will be checked by CERTs to make sure they're not dehydrated. Because we have a walking club called Kyle Ambets Walkers, and we are certified by both the national and international Volksports organizations, and there will be walkers from other areas of Texas and the United States as well. After the walk, we will be celebrating Ambet's 10th anniversary birthday in Kyle. And again, we ask all citizens and city council and the mayor himself that be invited. There will be food, music, refreshments for all attendees at no cost. It will start at 11 a.m. and conclude when all have the left or all the food and refreshments is gone. We also would like to thank Samantha Arbruster, Rachel Saunier, Jesse Shore, and the City of Kyle for help and partnership in this People's Walk. Couldn't have been accomplished without these individuals. We could not have gotten it going through everyone's help, and we're looking forward to having 2 walks next year. We do a lot for the community, and we're pulling for the community and want to take care of our community. With all this, thank you, and I hope to see you all out there.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, Ms. Kay Rush.
Good evening. My name is Kay Rush. I'm a citizen of Kyle, and I reside in Amberwood. Last year, I came to you about the Homestead exemption for seniors and the disabled. Tonight, I want to thank Dext for helping to shepherd this item into the agenda. Last year, in 2021, the land value increased $20,000. Now, in 2022, the land value has increased again, $25,200, for a total of $45,200 in just 2 years. The City of Kyle only allows $30,000, and this has been for the last 16 years. And it is the lowest of all the taxing districts on your property taxes. Hayes County gives you $50,000 plus a freeze on your home value when you qualify for the exemptions. Seniors and disabled have lost the entire value of the exemption. With the land value increase and the higher value of the homes, since we also in Amberwood have some of the highest water rates, we pay $85.48 per month to the City of Kyle for our wastewater and garbage. We have Monarch Water, so we again pay high. $4,000 costs $85.21. So my average cost per month is $170.69. This allows me to have water for home uses and the ability to flush my toilet. The seniors and disabled need the homestead exemption increased to help us keep pace with the high property taxes, and it should be equal to the Hayes County amount or truly raised to $75,200 to account for the last $45,000 of increases we have incurred in the last 2 years. Please help the elderly and the disabled afford their home taxes so they can remain in their homes they've worked all their lives to afford.
All right, thank you. That is all of the comments forms that I have. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. It is now closed. Next up, agenda item number 4, a Memorial Day, D-Day proclamation. This is Mayor Pro Tem's items. He is tardy. He's doing an event with the police right now, and so Councilor Tobias is stepping in his stead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem is not available this evening, but gave me the honor to be able to read this proclamation. So, whereas since our nation's founding, American sons and daughters have given their lives in service to our country, from Concord to Gettysburg to Marne to Normandy, and from Icon and Cachet to Baghdad and Kandahar, they departed our world as heroes and gave their lives for a cause greater than themselves. Whereas we pay tribute to those who have paid the ultimate price to defend the United States and the principles upon which America was founded for Memorial Day and D-Day. Whereas today, Americans from all backgrounds and corners of our country serve with valor, courage, and distinction in the United States Armed Forces. They stand shoulder to shoulder with the giants of our nation's history, writing their own chapter in American story. Many of today's warriors know what it means to lose a friend too soon, and all our service members and their families understand the true meaning of sacrifice. Whereas this Memorial Day, we express our deepest appreciation to the men and women in uniform who gave their last full measure of devotion so we might live in freedom. We cherish their memory and pray for peace for which they laid down their lives. We mourn with the family and friends of those have lost and hope they find comfort in knowing their loved ones died with honor. We ask for God's grace to protect these fighting in distant lands, and we renew our promise to support our troops, their families, and our veterans. Their unwavering devotion inspires us all. They are the best of America. Whereas this D-Day, we commemorate the Allied invasion of Normandy during World War II, when more than 156,000 Allied troops, including 73,000 Americans, stormed the beaches and cliffs on June 6, 1944, for the largest seaborne invasion in history. Whereas it is our sacred duty to preserve the legacy of these brave Americans, and it remains our charge to work for peace, freedom, and security. Let us strive to uphold the founding principles they died defending. Let their legacy continue to inspire our nation. And let this solemn lesson of sacrifice and service be taught to future generations of Americans. Whereas they may have been many local veterans who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Therefore, be it proclaimed by the City of Kyle that in honor of all Kyle area veterans who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Kyle resolve that May 30th, 2022 is known as Memorial Day in Kyle, and that on June 6th, 2022 is known as D-Day in Kyle. We recognize Alfredo Lopez and Michael Dorman, two sons of Kyle who paid the ultimate sacrifice during the Vietnam campaign. We additionally recognize the Central Texas AMVETS Post 115 and the Kyle Veterans of Foreign Legion Wars Post 12058 for their efforts in recognizing our veterans who have given their lives for their country on this Memorial Day. Signed and entered on this day, the 7th of June of 2022.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have any comments? All right.
Would you like to do a photo proclamation?
You want to do a photo?
Just thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for bringing this forward, and thank you, Councilmember Tobias, for reading it for us.
Do we have any veterans who'd like to come forward as well to be a part of the photos? If we're going to do one? Or no?
There's got to be some veterans out there.
I see several of them back there, so.
Stand alone. We don't do that. Not the veteran thing to do, right?
Veteran thing to do. So we gotta slide it. Yeah, just a little bit to center all y'all. Perfect. All right. On the count of 3. There we go. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, veterans.
All right, next up, agenda item 5, Women's Veterans Day, June 12th, City Council Proclamation. Councilor Ellison.
Yeah, I was about to say, don't go too far.
All right, here we go again.
All right, so it is my honor to introduce this proclamation here for Women's Veterans Day, which will be June 12th. And it is my honor to introduce Danielle, who is part of our IT division here at the city, and she has gotten used to writing proclamations now. So I'm very happy to present you tonight for this great proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Whereas Women's Veterans Day is celebrated annually on the 12th of June, the date was first recognized when the New York State Assembly declared June 12, 2008 to be Women Veterans Recognition Day, marking the 70th anniversary of the groundbreaking Women's Armed Services Integration Act, signed into law by President Harry S. Truman on June 12, 1948. That law enabled women to serve as permanent regular members of the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. And whereas the date is not recognized nationally, but is recognized by a few states, either through legislation, organizations, or proclamations. The first Texas Women Veterans Day was held on June 12, 2018, when Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a bill designating June 12th as Texas Women Veterans Day. The stated goal of Women Veterans Day varies somewhat by state, but can generally be acknowledged as an effort to honor the work of women in the United States Armed Forces, to recognize the unique challenges that they faced. And whereas, while Women Veterans Day is currently only a state-recognized commemoration, there is an effort to have the day recognized at a national level. U.S. Representative Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey introduced a resolution in both 2019 and 2020 to have June 12th officially recognized as Women Veterans Appreciation Day. The purpose of this resolution is to address the disparities in care, recognition, and benefits that our women veterans receive, and to highlight the growing presence of women in the armed forces, and to pay respect to women veterans for their dutiful military service. And whereas the City of Kyle acknowledges the contributions women veterans bring through their service to our great nation, therefore be it proclaimed by the City of Kyle that June 12th should be celebrated as Texas Women's Veterans Day. It was my greatest honor to be able to present this to Mayor and Council as a mother of 2 and Air Force combat veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation New Dawn. I'm also the founder of Her Women's Veterans Society, which is a 501c3 nonprofit for women veterans in the area. So this means a lot to me, and I'm deeply passionate about that work. So thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you, Danielle. And I'm glad you mentioned your nonprofit as well, because I know that's been something that's a big dream of yours. Thank you, Council, for support of this proclamation, and thank you, Danielle, for continuing to put yourself out there in support of that. Can we get a round of applause for her? And all of our other women veterans. We'll just get it on we just need to get it on the website, but we'll get it back to you, the actual hard copy. Yes, yeah, we would love to take a picture with you, absolutely.
All right, we're gonna center ourselves. All right. Here, I'll go first real quick, and then, you, oh. I didn't know the flash was on. All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank y'all very much.
Okay, does anyone have anything to add? All right, next up, agenda item number 6, presentation of graduates of the 2022 Team Kyle Academy. Mr. James Earp.
Mayor, Council, for the record, James Earp, Assistant City Manager, and I have the privilege of being assisted by Xander Bull, because he's amazing.
I'm Xander Baker, the designer for the City of Kyle.
Xander somewhat inherited the academy, and we're really excited about getting this program back up and running again. We had a really great turnout for our first initial group to come back, and I think they all had a really great experience. So we have their certificates tonight. We have graduation that's come through, so we have folks that have completed their requirements. And Xander is going to read out their names, and then we're going to present them their certificates. So I guess we'll hold our applause to the very end as we have a nice large group up here. Okay.
Sounds good. So as I call your name, please come up and receive your certificate. Sylvia Diaz. Priscilla Cruz. At the end. Yeah, stay up. We're going to get a picture of all of you. Neil Stegall. Michael Herlick. Mary Landrum. Larry Simone.
We need to double check, make sure he actually.
Kenneth Rocha. Galen Carson. And Frank Schultz.
Frank. No, you're fine. No, don't worry about it.
So Mayor, Council, this is our group. They completed their qualifications, so congratulations, y'all. Now I'm going to get out of the way for pictures.
We'll stay up here for this one.
It's for this, yes. If everyone will kind of scoot in towards the middle for me, please. A little bit more. Let's move this way just a tad. Perfect. One, two, and three. Wonderful. Thank all of you for a wonderful program.
Mayor, ready to say a few words. One, I'm so proud to have this back. I went through a similar type of class several years ago, almost 10 years ago. And back then, we did one class a month, and it took an entire year to get through there. And I didn't get a shirt either, so I don't even know what's going on with that. But no, those are well deserved. It was fun to come and sit in on many of your classes, listening to the great questions that you all asked, watching you all play on the equipment at Public Works. There were a couple of people out there that really knew what they were doing, so you might get hit up by Harper for a job. But it was really such an joy to see our community come to learn and understand a little bit more about how, in particular, this city works. And, you know, I told you all in the class when I came and spoke, you all will now be our SMEs, our subject matter experts out there in your own communities to help spread the good news and help people also understand how these things work. And so we look forward to continue to bring this class in the future, and a great opportunity for our residents around to have a great opportunity to learn everything. We talked about pulling off the roof to let everybody in and understand, and I think we did probably a pretty solid job of that. We hope to get your feedback as well so we can make those classes even better in the future. Thank you.
Councilman Flores-Kell.
Thank you. I just want to say good job, and I expect no less than 2 of you guys to run for city council. Maybe more, but now you're qualified, overqualified.
Yeah, anyone want to follow that? All right, we're going to move on. Next up, agenda item number 7, Spring Creek Trail presentation. Mr. Alan Ross.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm glad to be here tonight to give you an update regarding the Spring Branch segment of the Plum Creek Trail, which is part of the overall Vibe Trail that the city's been working on for many months now. And so just a quick update. Our contract, let's see here. All right, the effective date of the contract was December 6, 2021, and that's the contract between Schaumburg and Polk and the City of Kyle. The contract between the City of Kyle and Texas Parks and Wildlife was actually not executed until some months later. But the contract time for our contract with the city is 24 months. So the project status, we've completed 100% of the topographical survey, and so I think some of you came out and maybe witnessed our drone flying part of the path. We did both the total Plum Creek Trail and the Spring Creek Trail all in just a couple of days' time. We're 30% complete with the design phase, and so where we are is we've completed the alignment of the trail through the Spring Branch Corridor. And so the Spring Branch Corridor, as probably all of you know, is between James Adkins Road and FM 150. And there's a couple of road crossings. It actually crosses Spring Creek Drive. And so it's a great big floodplain. There are a lot of things to navigate back there, but we've completed a final alignment. And so where we're going right now is we are negotiating with HOAs for actual easements to construct the project. Once we have those easements in place and we know that we don't have to tweak the alignment anymore, we'll come up with a profile grade line and final details and be ready to go to the bidding phase. So we anticipate completing the design phase in September. Again, the critical path driver there is acquisition of easements. And we don't anticipate a problem there. All of these easements are encumbered already as drainage easements. Some of them are already encumbered as park easements, but we want to refine that language to make sure that we have specific authority to build the trail back there. The construction phase is expected to last about a year. We fully expect to be in construction by December and hopefully a little bit earlier. That'll give us plenty of time to get the project done within the 24-month contract time. This project is partially funded by a $200,000 grant from Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. So that sweetened the pot a little bit anytime that you're able to leverage local funds with funding from a form of the state or federal government. It's always a good deal, I think, for the governing entity or for the city. The remainder of the funding will be from the city of Kyle. Now, there are some cautionary notes here. When we put this application together, it was in 2019. A lot of things have changed since 2019. I think inflation is probably a word that everybody is familiar with these days. And so the project costs keep going up. We expect this segment of trail to cost a little bit over $1 million. That's kind of a scary number. We're early enough in the design phase that we're still doing value engineering and finding ways to cut costs where we can. But I think the council needs to know that we're looking at a big number to get this thing constructed. Here is the preliminary trail alignment. Now, I apologize for the resolution. It's just the screen is small. But if you zoom in, you can see a lot of detail there. And there's also contours that you can see that are a part of the project. So we flew this thing with a drone. And I mean, our drone or unmanned aerial vehicle takes excellent photos. It does a great job of collecting data points so that we can determine contours within about 0.2 of a foot. That's pretty good for raw property. And so we're real proud of the figure that we've been able to develop here. You can see the red figure is the alignment of the trail, okay? In the middle here, kind of south of or I guess that would be east of Spring Creek Drive, there's an unusual kind of projection there in the trail. And the reason for that is because we're designing this thing to FHWA standards for off-road vehicles in the form of like golf carts and so on and so forth. So we have to have some pretty wide radiuses so people don't run off the trail either with vehicles such as golf carts or bicycles or any type of wheeled vehicle. So we have a little bit of an unusual configuration there as it crosses the levee in the drainage easement. And then you can see how the trail follows the sanitary sewer easement up to Spring Branch Drive and then over to James Atkins. So alignment set, survey's complete. We're ready to move forward with acquiring easements. So we have 10 properties here. The two in the middle that are the darker brown color, those are actually owned by the city of Kyle already, so we don't need easements there. But we do need easements for 1 through 5 and then 8 through 10. We're already engaging the different homeowners associations. Ms. Victoria Rivera, which is an attorney that represents the city, has been working closely with us to develop the easement language. We had a meeting with her a couple of weeks ago. And so I think we're progressing nicely. We know who to talk to. We know what the easement language needs to say. And so I think that we're literally just a couple of months away from making a lot of progress on acquiring easements. We've begun putting together our drawings. Like I say, we're about 30% complete. So we have a set of drawings put together. Some of this stuff is just boilerplate stuff like title sheets, general notes, which there's a lot of those. There's the project location between FM 150 and James Atkins, and then these are standard details that we'll use for the construction of the project. And then here are the actual plan sheets. And again, once we have the alignment nailed down, we can put the profile grade line in for the trail, and those will look a lot more complete. But we're pleased with our progress. We're well within the 24-month figure to get this thing designed and constructed. That's my report, and I'll be happy to entertain questions.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for the presenter? Councilor Florskamp.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but I would like to take a tour if it's possible.
I'm sorry?
A tour? Do you guys have time to take a few of us on a tour just to look at it?
Oh, a tour.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I have a special hiking stick that I found on the trail, and I'll use that when we have the tour.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'd be happy to do that, Council Flores.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up, City Manager's Report.
All right, I'll wait for that screen to change over here. There we go. Mayor, Council, first up on the City Manager Report, we actually have an agenda tonight. So next slide. There we go. Now we actually know who's covering which slides. So I'll take the first couple, and we've got a few things to talk about. So first off is budget workshops. And we have our work session number 2. Go ahead, next slide. There we go. Which is coming up on July 7th. So please make sure that is marked on your calendars, 5:30. Again, public is absolutely welcome to join us for any of these work sessions. And you'll see the dates for the remaining 3 work sessions. We are working diligently as staff, going through all the numbers, and looking forward to that next work session. The next item is the board and committees application process. So we are open right now, and this is a big shout out to everybody in the community who would like to serve and volunteer. There are a lot of opportunities. So we have multiple boards, committees, commissions, et cetera, that will have seats open. And you can find information online at cityofkyle.com/BC. Again, you'll need to sign up by August 31st, and then you'll be invited to a selection by council. Next, we have Mariana Espinosa.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Mariana Espinosa, Parks and Recreation Director. This Friday at Greg Clark Park at sundown at the basketball courts, we have Movies in the Park. We're showing Little Rascals. There's no registration required, and it's free to attend. And then the following day, this Saturday, we have our first Juneteenth celebration downtown on Burleson Street in City Square Park, and it is also our first market day of the season. The Juneteenth program begins at 9:00 a.m., and then following, the vendors will open. There's live performances from our brand new Kyle Baton Twirlers, Fallon Franklin, and Houston's Ballet's first African American ballerina. So that's this Saturday at City Square Park at 9:00. And then next Saturday, we have our skate nights at Ash Pavilion. You do have to register online to sign your waiver, and that's from 7 to 9. And we have enough staff where we can have open swim time at the pool. So the pool will open to the public right now 2 days a week on Fridays and Saturdays. If and when we are able to secure more staff that are trained, we will add more public swim times. And then during the week, the pool is hosting our swim team and still hosting all of our rentals on the weekends. So public swim will be on Fridays and Saturdays beginning June 24th. And less than a month away, we will be celebrating our nation's independence. This year, our fireworks show will be launched from Lake Kyle Park, since La Verde Park is not quite ready for the fireworks to be launched over there. So this year only, parking will not be allowed at Lake Kyle Park, but parking and viewing of the fireworks is encouraged in other locations such as Tobias Elementary, Steeplechase Park, Fuentes Elementary. And with the park being closed to the public, we are able to shoot larger size shells. So the fireworks will actually be able to be seen from many locations throughout Kyle this year. And that will be at approximately 9:30 on Monday, July 4th. And the communications department has secured a radio station, so that will be marketed, and you can hear our Independence Day music as you watch the fireworks show, and it is a 20-minute show. Any questions?
This is your opportunity to ask questions about the last couple of slides. So.
Thank you, Mariana. So I was reached out by a lot of residents showing discontent for the place. And of course, there were different stories, and I appreciate you telling me exactly what happened. What are the possibilities? Because I know parking is an issue, and some people don't want to take shuttles, of communicating again with the golf course to see if there is a chance to do them there again.
Right. So as soon as we found out that Loretta Park would not be ready for the fireworks show, we did reach out to the Plum Creek Golf Course, and unfortunately, they had already made other arrangements since we had told them we had a different location. I have not been in communication with them since, and I'm not sure if anyone else has. But last I was told, it was unavailable for 4th of July.
So that is something that cannot change. I mean, let's say that they come back and say, yes, we can do them here. Is that something to be considered for the city, or will that be too
I'd have
late
to
of a
speak with
notice.
my assistant city manager and city manager. Like I said, 4th of July fireworks is less than a month away.
Yes, I understand.
So I would have to go with the direction of Jerry.
All right, thank you.
Jerry Hendricks, Assistant City Manager. For the record, we have reached out to the golf course as recently as a couple weeks ago. They still do not have availability for us to do our fireworks show there. We've also explored other potential venues in the Plum Creek area and have not been able to find a place where it'd be safe to launch fireworks this year. We do plan on returning to the Plum Creek area next year.
All right, thank you. Oh,
I have a
Councilor
real
Tobias.
quick question referencing the pool. Okay. I know this is an ongoing issue with all the other cities trying to hire lifeguards. What are we doing to help try to promote that we still have openings?
Yeah.
I know we're only going to be open twice a week, correct, for the week?
For public swim.
For public swim, so just wanted to know what direction we're going at to try to encourage people to apply.
Right, the pool will be utilized by the public 7 days a week, but in the capacity of swim team, rentals, and 2 days will only be public swim. And so the Human Resources Department, of course, with support of management, worked really hard to secure a $250 sign-on bonus for all applicants that are hired this year, as well as raise the starting rate to up to $15 an hour. And those were two things that we didn't have before, which helped us recruit a couple of people. And we're still actively trying to get the word out, get in the public. Staff have attended several job fairs, try to get in newsletters, both at churches and schools before they let out. So we're still trying to recruit more staff and really pushing that $250 hire-on bonus.
I'd like to add that we've also been to the schools and other places where potential lifeguard candidates would hang out and even contracted third-party companies that would hire out lifeguards. And none of those places have lifeguards available either.
Mayor Pro Tem, I see you've got your screen on. We can't hear you, Robert, sorry. I can't hear you. Sorry, it's okay. Hey, just text me, Robert, text me your question and I'll bring it up here in a second if you want. So, do you have any other items to add, Mariana? Oh, Councilor Floresco.
Thank you. For the private users, do they bring their own lifeguards?
No, we staff lifeguards as part of their rentals.
So
We did. Amy, our recreation manager, did explore with our city's insurance and if it was possible for them to bring their own lifeguards. That's one option we did explore. A decision was made for us to continue to staff them.
Okay, if we continue to staff it, is it just that we can open to the private people because there's less people? Because if we have the lifeguards, I guess I'm just kind of confused as to why it's not open to the
Well,
public.
the rentals are only 2 hours, where public swim is 5 to 8 hours. So it's easier to get the lifeguards to work for just 2 hours.
And we can't open that up to the public
And
instead
it's
of...
also based on our lifeguard availability. We have very young adults that work in the pool, who have band, extracurricular activities, sports, travel, and so working around their schedules, that's how the schedule was determined.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right.
Yes, so the report will continue now, and we have Rachel Sonia.
Next slide, please. So I'll be talking about the Central Texas AMVETS 5K and 11K walk they have coming up. It'll be on Sunday, June 12th, so this weekend. Registration starts at 8 a.m. at Ash Pavilion at Greg Clark Park. They have, I think, several different tiers, $4 for most people, I think $3 or $2 for anyone under 12, and then if you want to get the special AVA certificate, it's $5. Everyone that registers does get a commemorative cooling towel for it, and they'll be having the celebration afterwards from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the actual AMVETS Post 115. For more information, you can go to our city calendar page. There is a calendar event page for it. Next slide. The next event, though, will also be our Juneteenth dialogue for Peace and Progress. That'll be on Friday, June 17th, starting at 7 p.m. But that will be, there we go, sorry. That'll be here at Kyle City Hall. There will be streaming options on the City of Kyle Facebook page, as well as on our Kyle 10 and YouTube channels. We're still taking dialogue panelists right now, so if you're interested in being a dialogue panelist, you can go to citykyle.com/dialogue. There's a web form to fill out there, or you can email Councilmember Ellison, telling them that you're interested in being a panelist. Next slide. All right, and of course, the 2022 State of the City is coming up on Tuesday, June 28th. This is hosted by the Kyle Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the City of Kyle. Tickets and sponsorships are still available for purchase on the Kyle Chamber's website. It will be at Texas Old Town this year, and we'll have lots of exciting information and things to display there. And I believe that's all.
That's it for Rachel, and then finally we have Paul Phelan.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Paul Phelan, Director of Library Services. And of course, our 2022 summer reading programming has kicked off on June 1st. It will be running through July 30th. And so we have a whole range of activities for folks. And this is all posted so that everybody knows on our Facebook page. And we share this over to the city accounts as well. And of course, we have all the marketing materials at the library. But our large programs this year will be on Saturdays. So we moved those hoping that more folks would have accessibility to them. So I think this Saturday, June 11th from 11 to 12, we have Didgeridoo Down Under. Now that will be a streamed program on a large screen. One of the rare ones that we just ran into that a little bit. Some folks still wanted to do that, but and that's just, celebrating culture and different things like that, music, dance for the kids. And just a whole range of things. We'll have movie matinees every Thursday. And just to give you a sense of some of the things, we'll have Austin Reptiles on July 2nd, percussion things on July 9th, either the Saturday programs the kids can enjoy playing drums, Japanese origami in another program, and just lots of movies on Thursdays as well, and other things spread out through the week. So we hope everybody comes on down, signs up for the summer reading program. Now, so for ages 0 to 4, when you read 120 minutes, you do get a prize, some prizes there at the library, but also you get entered for a drawing at the end. We will have gift certificates and things at the end of the summer reading program. For ages 5 to 10, it's 180 minutes for the minimal. Ages 11 to 17, it's 240, and for adults, it is 300 minutes. So we hope adults come out and read as well. And you can sign up. Let's see here, where's the address I'm looking at here? So it's kyle.bookpoints.org. And the easiest way to find that is just go to the library city page, click on library, and right there it's going to say sign up for the summer reading program right here with an exclamation point. You click on that and you're there. So that's the easy way to do it. And that's all we've got. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Council, we've got a lot going on and some great staff to get it done. So.
When was the time for June 11th market days? When does it start? 9 to 2. That'll be fun. That'll be our first market days with the newly revamped park. So I believe its capacity is substantially increased from what we already had before. So I'm looking forward to that one. All right, next up, CIP, road projects and consent agenda presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Leon Barba, City Engineer. On the Heroes Memorial Park, we're about 96% complete. We're finishing out the granite at the honor wall with the porcelain coming in this week. The ring wall granite installation is in progress. Landscape and plantings are in progress. The water feature wiring for the equipment is ongoing. And the equipment testing is pending. We're waiting to fill up the pond there with a little bit more water to be able to test that. And the expected completion date is in July. La Verde Park, we're at 54% complete. Playground installation is going on. Sidewalks and hardscape is ongoing. We're preparing for the roofing there at the pavilion. Irrigation is being installed, and we're going to be installing some topsoil for the next week. Expected completion date is late 2022. Public Safety Center, 35% complete. Phase 1, they're working on the window flashing and blocking. They're working on the second floor metal ductwork. Phase 2 and 3, they're still doing some electrical and plumbing rough-in. On Phase 3 and 4, they're working on the exterior sheeting. And they're also forming for the north parking lot. Substantial completion dates February 6, 2023. Southside wastewater improvements, based on the pay estimates, we're still at 94% complete. The next section to be constructed is Edwards Drive to Post Road. There's a change order that I'll talk to you a little bit about later in my presentation. Excuse me. Wastewater treatment plant expansion project, good news, we're online. June 2nd is the plant came online. According to operators, everything seems to be running fine, so we're looking good on that. The dewatering facility is 25% complete. We're still continuing to work on Saturdays. We expect to complete the dewatering facility in August of 2022. We're experiencing supply chain delays, obviously, as everybody else is with the operations building furniture. I think we'd like to have a kind of a walk through the site, but we'd like to have all of our LID, our low-impact development stuff completed, and the furniture in the building before we start having any kind of walk-throughs through the building for folks to see that. Button Creek Interceptor, the line is in use. We're still finalizing paperwork. That's probably the last slides you'll see on this particular project. Old Post Road, the county's still working on the north end of the project. They're south of 150. They're working about 900 feet. They're getting ready to do some testing on their first layer base. Elliott Branch Interceptor, 68% complete. We still have some roads closed in the area. We're installing the last wastewater service today. All the water services will be installed by June 17th, and then we'll be doing all the testing during the June 9th through the 17th. We're expecting to complete that in fall of 2022. The big last part that we have to go through is going to be the paving of the roads. I've added this slide in just to let you know where we are with the downtown relocation. They're about 74% complete. All the underground conduit is in. We're waiting on PEC to start moving some of the new lines in that they need to place, and we're doing some cleanup this week. We're also having a delay in getting some of the panels and equipment that we need for some of the electrical stuff. So we're hearing it's about 22 weeks out with some of the stuff. So we're delaying on this project too. Going over the consent agenda items. Item 10 is an interlocal with Hays County. This is for a project that we want, LJA is going to be the engineer on the project. They're going to be adding 12-foot of shared use vehicle path that we're going to have there from on Dacey from BB to Chapa. Then from there it goes down to 10 feet. They're also installing street lighting. They're also installing a temporary light at the intersection of Dacey and BB. On the item number 11, that's related to item 10. This is the $50,000 that's in that interlocal agreement. This is to pay the engineer to do the design so we can continue moving forward with that construction. Number 22 is a task order to LJ Engineering. If most of you have seen it, there is new construction going on south of Yarrington. It's the new FM 110, and that's a brand new right-of-way. TxDOT has got that project there. LJA is a design engineer. We have asked him to add about 4,600 feet of water line, 16-inch water line from our existing ground storage and take it to the east and tie into that new development there at Waterstone. There at Waterstone, the developer will pick it up and enter into their subdivision. Item 23, that's one I wanted to kind of bring up and talk to you about that particular change order. That is a huge change order. There's three big reasons for this particular change order being so large. Typically, when you do these kind of contracts, you do bores every so many feet. In this particular case, the bores were done about 1,500 feet apart. And as you would imagine, guess where we hit the hard rock? It was between those two bores. We did look at the plans, we looked at the bores, and the contractor encountered some really hard rock. It's what we call the blue rock. And so they found an outcrop there of the blue rock. It took him 43 days to get through that section of about 1,000 feet, and it normally would have taken him about 8 days. So we're ending up having to pay for that difference in the ground conditions. That was about $95,000 on that particular change. The other major one was in front of the Alexander property. As we acquired that easement, Originally, we had a force main out in the right-of-way, TxDOT's right-of-way. After we acquired the easement, we decided to replace that force main with a gravity line. And of course, the gravity line that we're putting in is deeper and also larger. So we had to pay the difference for that particular installation. So we're looking at about $200,000 in that particular change. So, and the contractor was there in the area, so we didn't want him to have to remobilize. So we said, continue on with the project. We had it redesigned, and they built that new section with gravity line. Whenever we have force main, we always want to try to get rid of force main and put a gravity line there. So that's why the amount's $200,000 difference. On the last item, it's for the section that's in front of the Murray property. We decided to try to put that line back in within the right-of-way. We have about 30 feet there. There's a 12-inch water line. There's a fiber optic there. There's a gas line. And we've got 30 feet to put an 18-inch gravity line and a 14-inch force main in that section that's left there. As a result, we had to work with TxDOT. They allowed us to use a different type of backfill that wasn't as expensive as what they asked us to do originally. And we also have to do some additional traffic control. That was another $120,000 for that change order. So you're looking at about $415,000 for that change order was those three big items. But I wanted to explain that a little bit better to you. And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you, Leon. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Barber? Councilmember Tobias.
Okay, that's from George Strait there. Okay, real quick, when it comes to the street light that you're going to put up at Daisy at the corners, Daisy and BB, is it going to be a actual working traffic light, or is it going to be a lamp post light?
It's just a street light.
It's just a street light.
Yes, sir.
Okay, like kind of like where we put one at Seton Parkway, one of those. Because
it's just a temporary for now.
Temporary for now.
Until the traffic signals come in.
Okay,
Yes,
because well, I'm just glad it's coming because I get fuel there sometimes around 8, 9 o'clock at night, and all you have is those small stop signs. I've seen so many cars run those because there's nothing there to light up. So I appreciate that's coming.
I think the line item cost for that was around a little over $3,000.
Okay, well, thank you.
Councilmember Parsley.
I have a couple of questions about item 23. So, and I know you were just talking about the change that we're doing to gravity lines versus the force main. So I know force main normally you have to dig deeper, less deep than doing a gravity, which probably reduces the cost, but normally you will have to have a lift station for that. So had we already budgeted for the lift station, what are we doing with that?
Yes, the lift station's still in place. That's a really, excuse me, that's a really long stretch of force main, and we reduced it by 1,600 feet. So it was a 14-inch force main, and it was about 4 feet deep. And we replaced it with an 18-inch line that's about 15 feet deep.
Why exactly that?
What we replaced it with is a gravity line.
Mm-hmm.
Maintenance-wise, it's better to have a gravity line than a force main because it's under pressure.
Okay, and I also see that there is another lift station added to this change order. So I was thinking if we already had budgeted for the one that we were going to use for the force main, are we going to have an additional one, or what are we doing with the one that we had already budgeted for when we were planning on having a force main instead of the gravity line?
The change order does not include a lift station. That's a little sleeve that they added to the Public Works asked for a sleeve to add into the lift station. That's the $5,000 item I think you're looking at.
Give me 1 second. I have a lift station. Okay, so that lift station that we have in the driveway box culvert is not the same one.
The box culverts, we had to extend the box culverts in front of the lift station site.
Okay. And so my next question is, are we doing any sort of soil test for the rest of the project? Like if we find more rock and we're gonna have to budget for more excavation?
The last section, we have actually 2 more sections to complete. The one is in front of the Murray property. We don't anticipate any rock in that area. And we did take bores, but they're not spaced that closely. So we're going to have enough trouble with that line anyway. Part of that project's going to be costing us more, mainly because we're right there in TxDOT's right away. We're going to dig it up, put in as much pipe as we can during the day, then close it up and cover it up. The TxDOT was concerned about having that area open in case it rained. So it's going to be a very slow process, but we don't anticipate hitting rock in that area.
I just see that the change orders are so expensive.
They
and
are.
we have had 8 already. So those are my concerns. If we are planning ahead on, I don't know how we're budgeting for all of these changes. So those are my concerns with that.
And ours is as well, Councilmember.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Flores-Cal.
Thank you. Hi. So I see there was a credit for 14 feet, or 14-inch probably, force main. So that gave us, where did that credit come from? Explain that to me.
Because we replaced the 14-inch force main, they gave us a credit for that. But we still had to end up paying the difference for the additional cost for the 18-inch line that we put in. So that is a credit to us, yes.
Okay, so we gave back those 14-inch, or do we have them?
They were not installed. It wasn't installed.
Okay.
And one thing I wanted to point out that because of the easement issues that we had in that particular project, we had a force main going in a 90-degree angle into another manhole. So we had two 90-degree angles. So maintenance-wise, it was not a good thing to have, but that we didn't have any choice because of the easements that we weren't able to get at that time. And so that was one of the good things in the fact that we finally got the easement. We removed those two 90-degree turns in the manhole. I mean, these are big lines, and you really don't want 90-degree turns in those things. And so we were able to eliminate two manholes in that case and not have to do the 90-degree turns. The Public Works Department is not crazy about those kinds of things, obviously. So that's the reason we were able to decided to extend the gravity line further south.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we don't have the 14-inch lines. Like, the city doesn't have them, and now we got to find something to do with them?
No, we
Is
did
that
not
the
pay
case?
for those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because the concern to me is, without that credit, this would be a $635,000 change order.
That's
and
correct.
so where does this money come from?
This is these projects are paid for through impact fees.
Can you kind of, for those that don't know what an impact fee is, could
Certainly. Impact fees are paid by every new house, every new establishment that goes in. There's a water impact fee and there's a wastewater impact fee. And what that does is pay for future development. These projects were developed back in 2011, and the decision was made to extend these sewer lines back towards the south. And so the idea was to pay for these with the impact fees. For example, with the lift station that we have there right now in phase one, that's going to be able to handle about a little over 2,000 LUEs. And so at the current rate that we have, $2,826, so that's about $5.7 million will generate in impact fees. Every time somebody buys a house, they have to pay an impact fee for water and wastewater.
So those impact fees are, every year during the budget season, they're allotted, correct?
They're allotted for new projects, yes.
Okay, so do we know if we have enough from impact fees to pay the $546,000?
I talked to the finance director, and he said he would take care of it. So, but you have to remember that we have some other projects that we've been delayed on. So the funding that we were going to use for those projects, we still haven't spent that money, so they're still there, and they've been delayed. Again, that's why we're able to use that other money to spend it on this.
Okay, so as long as it's all within the impact fee, then we don't have to, council doesn't come back to us for a vote to say, yes, we want to redirect it to this impact fee instead of that one. Is that correct?
We can spend the impact fees on any projects that we want to upgrade a line, for example, or add a new line. That's council's prerogative, yes.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, we have consent agenda now, items 10 through 24. Does anybody want to pull any items? Motions?
I would like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 10 through 24.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Flores-Cal, seconded by Councilmember Tobias. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I want to go ahead and ask if there's any objection to finally passing agenda item number 21. All right, it is finally passed. All right, next up, agenda item number 25, consider and possible action to waive the requirement of the 12-month waiting period in section 53-1205 of the city's code of ordinances with regards to the application for zoning or property located at 5839 Kyle Parkway. This item is sponsored by Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to propose to waive that requirement. CTC has provided this sign that I believe will be beneficial for Kyle. I don't know if they want to come and talk about it.
Yes. Good evening, council. It's good to see all your faces again. Thank you for your time. For the record, I'm Travis Donnell. I'm here to speak on behalf of CTC Residential with my partner Sean Ratter. He's here in the back of the room as well. So we're here to answer any questions you guys have. Just want to remind you guys of a few things. So what's changed about the project, I think is probably the most important thing. Really, there's two issues that we're addressing. One are the restrictions on the site that we are on the 1 yard line of resolving. If you guys aren't aware, just to remind you, so Seton Hospital is directly across the street from our site, then we've got Lowe's and Walmart, and this 15.5 acre parcel right in the middle is subject to restrictions from all three of those entities. So we're on the 1 yard line of lifting the onerous restrictions from Lowe's, which are contingent upon the project being mixed use, which will allow us to build what we expect will be a really exciting Class A high-end apartment project with integrated retail. The second thing to remind you of, which has changed, is if you guys recall, on the northern property boundary of our site is Bunton Branch Creek. We, in touring the site, really think we can create what is a natural amenity into an asset for the community. And we've listened to you guys and other precedent zoning cases really see the need for food and beverage and open green space for families. And so what we are working towards, working with Scott and the planning staff, is coming up with a really neat design that can be enjoyed by the communities. And we, as our next step, are going to work over the next few weeks, if you guys give us the chance and the opportunity to try at this again, to come up with a really awesome design that will be a great value add to the community. So hopefully we have your support to try again.
And council, just the process here, since it was not approved, it does need typically a 12-month waiting period by council asking for it to come back. This starts the process de novo with the planning commission.
Right, so to clarify, this isn't reconsidering the vote, this is waiving the
12-month
12
requirement.
months. So they'll be going all the way through the process again. I have a question, so is that okay? Yeah. All right, the question I have is, are you going for straight zoning, or are we going to be bringing forward a development agreement that sort of encapsulates these proposals?
So we're going to do it through a PUD, I believe.
That's a zoning, but are we? But we're going to be. Golly.
Yeah.
We're going to be negotiating a PUD.
Just wanting to make sure that the proposals for it being Class A, for example, the PUD itself won't necessarily speak to that, and also the amenities that are proposed, that they will be incorporated into an agreement that ensures that will take place, and then also things like timeline for construction, meaning that they can't just build the multifamily, but that they have to build the retail contingent. Or concurrently, I would say, with those sort of basic things that we always ask for in these mixed-use projects.
Mayor, yes, sir. We will be negotiating a development agreement as well that will contemplate materiality and all of those things that you just mentioned. Yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Councilman Flores-Kell.
Thank you. So it says on the agenda, actually, that's why I think there might have been some confusion. It says it approved on 1/18/22, but actually was denied. And so when I spoke with you guys, you said it was only just to get a waiver to start the process over again.
That's
so
correct.
All that information we're going to see later on. My one issue that I had was with the traffic report. And so the report had only information regarding the housing and not with the businesses.
Okay.
So if you guys could obtain another report, and I hate to make you spend money again, but just to show what it would be like to be the mixed use, that would give us a little more relief, because I think for us there was a lot of concerns regarding that traffic. And the report that you showed said, it would be better than what was currently zoned for, but it didn't also have the business part of it. So if you could just add that to it, I would appreciate it.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 25.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bradshaw, seconded by Councilmember Flores-Kell. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, next up, agenda item 26, discussion regarding possible text amendments and/or alternative traffic calming measures to be considered in single residential zoned areas, including but not limited to R11, R12, R13, R1A, M1, M2, M3. Councilor Ellison.
Mayor, motion to postpone the agenda item until after agenda item 35.
Second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
Councilor Florescale.
yeah, I'm just curious as to why we would postpone until a later item. Could we, okay, yeah, that's my question. So what's the reason?
I'd like to discuss it later in the agenda. Per the council rules, it has to be at the top, which we complied with, and I'd like to, it's a pretty robust discussion that I'd like to have with council, and I'd like to take my time a little bit with it, and so I'd just ask that we discuss it towards the end of the agenda.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, next up, agenda item 27, discussion and possible action regarding the City of Kyle's process of creating the comprehensive plan. Councilor Florescale.
All right, thank you. This meeting went way faster than I thought, so let me get my information out. So I had reached out to Will, who always does a really good job of responding with his answers, so I appreciate that. And I was trying, this is the first time I've ever been, probably all of us have been involved in a full-fledged comprehensive plan. And so through my time on the dais, I learned that I was under the assumption that there was going to be quite a bit of resident input. And through only my reading, I went back and I went to the charter, and I went back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it looks like there's not like a requirement to have residents actively participate. So I guess I'm kind of curious, first of all, I think the participation within the charter lies within the Planning and Zoning Board. And then the Planning and Zoning position description. So unless there's something I'm missing, because I was thinking, oh, maybe there's an ordinance that oversees it as well. But I guess my concern was to have residents included at the beginning and not provide them something and say, what do you think about it? But to collectively be able to make decisions together. But I don't find anything that gives residents that authority.
Thank you, Councilmember Florescale, Will Atkinson, Senior Planner. Without having the charter in front of me, yes, ma'am. I believe you're correct. There's no requirement to have them be involved from the charter's perspective. However, it is a very good idea. Whenever we do any full comprehensive plan, if we do a downtown master plan revitalization plan, if you will, anything that will improve the city at large, we always want citizen input. It's the more data points we have, the more input we have, the better it is.
Mayor and Council, I might also add that in the RFQ that we issued, it called for a very robust, innovative public engagement plan. And so the responses that we received from the submitters had to include that. As you recall, we selected a firm to start negotiating with, and we are currently still in the negotiations with them. In the negotiations, that includes a scope of work, which also will be the scope of work will include the community engagement process. So it's, obviously our intention to have a very robust public engagement piece of that, and we're still working on that. Once we come to an agreed scope of work and a price, we will bring that back to the City Council for y'all's consideration, and y'all will be able to approve that at that point in time. So we're still in negotiation. Nothing has begun as part of the comprehensive plan yet. We're not started.
Okay, well I guess that's what brought me to the email was because, and I should have said that from the get-go, is I read one of the Monday manager meetings, and it spoke of different zone changes that there were going to be. And that's when I reached out and I said, well, how far along are we? And they said, yes, that they've already started to take into consideration zone changes. So that's what prompted the email. And I did inquire to see how far along we were. And if those decisions were being made, I just wanted the residents to be involved.
Sure, and I think probably what you read in the staff report was that Will has along the way been making notes about things that, hiccups in the code that he's found that, you know, need to be considered and changed. Of course, all of that will be brought to the public, but he's made note of that so that way we can be more efficient when we're ready to do a code rewrite, if that's something the council even wants to do at a future point in time. But the first part of this is just, you know, writing the comprehensive plan. Then the second part would be to do the code rewrite. And so, you know, Will has just passed on his notes basically, and all of that is still up for public engagement and consumption.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you. I really think what Councilmember Kell was referring to is making sure that we include, when we're negotiating, making sure that they understand that getting the residents' input early on in the process is very important. So something I really want to push on. The other thing I want to ask a question to our city manager, Scott. When we started going to the comprehensive plan, we talked about our senior planner. We still haven't hired that position. Where are we in that process? Because that really has a lot to do with this comprehensive plan.
Council, I think we're very close to bringing back a resolution for that issue.
Thank you, because it's been on my mind quite a bit, especially with the comprehensive plan coming.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Councilor Tobias.
I guess in hindsight, could we actually get an official date or time, like by August, by September, by October of this year or next year? I think we've been talking about this for a while now, and I know a lot of things are like, well, we're bringing that back. We're talking about it. We're discussing it. But I remember speaking about this when I first got signed on about 2 years ago about trying to get this changed. And I remember Councilman Ellison was bringing this up over and over again. Now we're at this phase. I remember we were talking about it, I think, in November and December, and now we're already hitting July. So I think for some of us, maybe I'm not speaking for them, but for me, is when will we actually see a date to where it's like we are now going to bring it to you on August 31st or September 10th or so forth? It's just a date. What time frame can we start really realistically looking at?
Yes, sir. I can give you a more immediate question from a time frame perspective. Late last week, we received the detailed document from the Verdernity Group for our citywide comprehensive plan for the cost of it and what have you. They're breaking down the different phases and what have you, and we are beginning to review that. And we're going to schedule a meeting or two with them over the next few weeks to really delve into that with them to make sure we're all on the same page, see if there needs to be any tweaks to it at all from adjustment from a cost or from services that need to be accounted for. And then whenever we're at a good spot with that, I believe then we'll probably be bringing it forward to y'all as the city council for consideration.
Okay, again, that's my point. What date can we actually put in concrete, like this is going to be the day by this time frame, by fall, by the end of the year, by the 31st?
To kick off the comprehensive plan.
To bring the contract.
Yes.
When do we get our contract? For us? So let's let city manager answer.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So the process, unfortunately, does take a little while when you start with the RFQ. You know, then you move into the actual proposal, which we just received. The proposal came back very high in price, so I'm just going to tell you all up front, we'll need a lot of negotiating. We'll probably, over the next couple of weeks, be negotiating that down and have questions for the council at the next council meeting. So what I'm going to propose, because again, the comp plan is a piece of the overall proposal. The code rewrite is a piece. There is a study on value per acre. That is a piece. Collectively, they form a budget amount that is far larger than we budgeted. So we'll bring back at the next council meeting basically where you want to go from a priority standpoint and what you think the budget should be for each of those components. And then we'll finalize the negotiation after that point. Most likely we'll be bringing back an agreement with Fraternity sometime in July. I would hope the first meeting in July, which is the 5th. And then at that point, we'll have a schedule to begin. Once we put them under contract, we're off to the races. So my hope is in July we get a schedule and we're starting the process. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, next up, agenda item number 28, discussion on possible action regarding a change in the City of Kyle's homestead exemption. Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Thank you. Due to the increase of home appraisals and seeing cities and counties such as San Marcos and Williamson County create and raise their homestead exemption, I wanted to bring this agenda item forward to discuss and decide whether the city should implement a homestead exemption for our residents. Texas state allows for a city to exempt up to 20% of a home's value, but the city also has the option to set amount under 20%, but at least $5,000. As a homeowner, I can appreciate the benefits of an exemption and would like to see a city homestead exemption, which will bring some relief to the already financial trying times. And I'm going to disclose that I'm not sure if the city, I don't think the city has one. I did reach out to Perez, and unfortunately I didn't get a response regarding if we have one or not, but it is my understanding that we do not currently have a homestead exemption. So I guess I would start with $15,000. I would like to see a $15,000 homestead exemption, if not more. The houses have increased probably 60% more than they were last year. And so, an exemption of either a flat fee or, a percentage would be nice for our residents. And the city would still gain additional ad valorem tax dollars. I wouldn't say, do the full 20, but something in between would be nice.
Councilor Ellison.
So to answer the question, currently we only have the 30,000 exemption for over 65. Y'all probably aren't going to be happy with what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it. Ms. Rush came and spoke earlier. She actually came at the beginning of last budget cycle, so spring of last year, and said many of the things that she pointed out to us this evening. And all of us were on this body except for Councilmember Parsley. And as a point of that, we had some executive session conversations where Pervez and staff talked to us about these exemptions. We looked at a number of different things. We also received an email on October 12th of last year. Once again, Councilmember Parsley was not on the dais at the time, but everyone else received this with property tax exemption options, both for age 65 and over homestead exemptions. Finance staff gave us 5 options with that. And then general residential homestead exemption options. And they gave us 10 options with that, showing us anywhere an exemption amount from $5,000 and then going in $5,000 increments all the way up to $50,000. And it displayed how much tax revenue would be exempted at each one of those levels. Finally, I also brought forward at our visioning workshop that we had in February this exact topic, and I will say I was a little disappointed in the response that I got from this body. So I certainly appreciate that it is something of the attention now. I've been trying to work on that for a year and a half now to get council to buy into an exemption. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. I have, since the last budget workshop meeting, we didn't really take the time after we heard all of staff's presentations to give our input on the budget, to give some direction going into the next budget workshop that we would have at the beginning of July. And that was, our first budget workshop was in May. And so I did meet with the city manager and Andy from the finance department to discuss this, and my top priority was exemptions. And we looked at the email that finance department Pervez provided for us. I gave my thoughts on that, and I would be happy to pass the mic over to Mr. Sellers to explain the additional information that staff would like to provide to us on going down this route of exemptions, I think this is the appropriate time to discuss it as we are going into the budget work session, because that gives staff an idea of what we want to frame with those exemptions. So this is the perfect time to really be incorporating that, and the perfect time to direct staff on which level of exemption and which ones, if we want to do other ones, to staff as they craft the budget. And so, Mr. Sellers, if you'd like to explain a little bit about the information, the additional data that is going to be brought forward to us at the next budget workshop.
Sure, yes. So, Council, an exemption is basically a reduction in property tax. And, in that email that Councilmember Ellison referred to, each option, each $5,000 increment corresponds to a certain amount of tax revenue exempted from being received by the city. So to put that into perspective, a $5,000 exemption in October of last year equaled about $250,000 of exempted value from the city. So what we would like to bring forward is in context of an exemption with the proposed road bond proposals. We know we'll have roughly a very large number. We don't know what that number is yet, so I don't want to speculate. But we have nine very large road projects, and our engineers are very quickly working on coming up with numbers, which will be proposed in July. With that, we will need to do quite a bit of analysis on what the tax value exempted versus the certain rates. Remember, there is what's called an INS, an interest and sinking rate component of the property tax. There's also a maintenance and operation component of the rate. So if we reduce in the exemption, if we had a $5,000 exemption, that comes out of the maintenance and operation portion. And so we're just going to have to figure out how best to consider exemptions, at the same time proposed a very large number for road bond improvements without hopefully raising the tax rate too much. You can see we're kind of at an offset here. We reduce on one side of the ledger, but yet we ask on another for those road bonds. The other piece of that equation is who is paying what. The exemption obviously is age 65 and over.
That's not what I'm asking for.
Okay.
You could, 65 and over is an additional one, but you could also do one for all homeowners up to 20%.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I would be looking for.
Okay, that's accurate. So there's also residential versus commercial on who pays what, and then the level of burden on each component type. So it's all going to be baked into a large analysis considering the proposed debt issuances that need to occur for the road bonds. And what we would like to do is, if the council would like to propose an exemption, we just add that to our analysis, again, knowing that we're going to have to make it up on the other side.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Scott, just real quick, y'all brought up, a couple of cities got brought up. Buda has an exemption, San Marcos as well. Do you have any idea, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, of what their tax rate, has it gone down through the years, or did it go up?
I believe San Marcos went up to fund some bond proposals. I think it went up, I want to say 8 or 9 cents. It was a pretty significant increase a couple of years ago. Not totally sure on the city of Buda what that ended up doing, although their taxable values did go up.
Okay, what have we done as a city, let's say in the last 5 years?
We have steadily declined in our tax rate, but yet our taxable value as a city has continued to increase.
Yeah,
So
and I understand the taxable value going up. I'm just trying to get these numbers together in my head.
Right, we've gone to from
figure out.
56 cents,
So-
all the way down to 50 cents,
So
basically.
I'm kind of seeing
in the tax
that
rate.
maybe the cities around us did the Homestead because they had raised the rate up and were afraid to tax people out. And that's kind of happened with us with our, our appraisal values going up really high. So I'm just weighing everything in my head right now. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out. But yeah, because we are getting an influx of dollars because of the home appraisal value. So I guess there could be some wiggle room around there somewhere. So just trying to figure it out. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Parsley.
I have a quick question. So what you're saying is that we may add is as a proposal when we are doing the vote? The bond vote? Is that what you're asking?
When, when the council considers how to fund, $100+ million of road debt, that those funds have to be considered. Now, it can be made up somewhat in the availability of tax rate based on the city has grown in value, and so the tax rate, if we're to stay, for example, at the 50 cents, there is additional capacity in that rate to pay off debt service for the bond, but we have to still come up with that analysis.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? I think that your feedback, Mr. Sellers, is pretty spot on, because the thing is, as it relates to tax rate and homestead exemptions, it's easy to make assertions if you're just looking at one side of the ledger. And so to incorporate proposals into your analysis that includes a potential homestead exemption, while we're also deciding what our tax rate is going to be and how much debt to fund, is the appropriate time, which I think it's good that this is being brought forward, because I'm not sure that was part of the scope of your budget process or analysis.
Correct.
So if you want it to happen, this is a good opportunity to include that into the scope, so that when we're getting ready to discuss our budget and set our tax rate, we can consider this as one of the factors. And that's good, because that will absolutely put into tension what our rate is and whether, what our bond is, or police officers and other things that, where that tension is, and makes it harder to make the decision, but also gives us the ability to make that decision and potentially pull from elsewhere. So
Yeah, I might add to that, as we're going through the budget process right now, I'm looking at shaving millions of dollars off of the requests that the council received. So I'm just trying to fit the needs of the city, pare that down into a box, as well as balance the need for future debt issuances. Now, later on the agenda, you do have a couple of items for a financial advisor and bond counsel. We were very intentional looking for a financial advisor that specializes in the analysis that we're talking about tonight. So that's also part of the overall scope, is really looking deep into the analysis of the tax rate versus exemptions versus the needs of the city.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to incorporate possible homestead exemption into their analysis as it relates to setting of the tax rate, calling for bond, and setting of the budget.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Tobias. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilmember Florescale.
Thank you. Okay, so two things I want to address are, one, I do not want to incentivize or use a homestead to incentivize people to vote for the bond. Those are two different issues, and they shouldn't be on the same ballot. So the tax rate usually goes down to keep the city from having to take the tax rate to the voters. So what is not being disclosed is once our values go to a certain amount, the city is only allowed to tax it at a certain rate before it goes to, before the voters have to say, yes, we will allow this rate to happen. Is that incorrect? We're capped at a city is capped at what they can take from the ad valorem taxes.
The homestead exemption takes only people who own and dwell in their home and gives them a specific break, whereas if you rent a home, your taxes would go up because you'd have to offset
No,
that.
I'm talking about the tax rate.
Oh,
so the reason why the city would roll back a tax rate is to keep from taking that rate and going over a certain amount, which the voters would then have to vote on.
You're talking about exceeding the rollback rate.
Correct.
Yeah, we have to take that
That
into
is exactly
consideration every budget.
So if not, for example, if we didn't roll back that rate, then it would exceed the amount, and then the voters would have to vote on if they want to keep that rate or not.
Well, this would be great analysis for the staff to put together.
I just want to make sure it's not analysis, it's kind of factual information. So I just want to make everybody aware that there is another side to this. It's not just, oh, the city is rolling back the rate. It's why is the city rolling back the rate? It's not just because we want to be nice. It's because we don't know if we took it to the voters if they would agree on that.
Right.
So I want to disclose that. And it really bothers me and I don't know if that's what this putting it on the bond is about, is like not rolling back that rate if we realize that now we go over that amount and placing that on the bond. Otherwise, what information do we put on that bond? What are we asking for in that bond? For a homestead
I'm not
exemption?
really following your question, I'm sorry. but-
Okay, so my question is, if we put on the bond with the roads, a bond or a vote of some sort for the homestead exemption, what would that language look like?
We don't have to, we can, by a vote of council, authorize the homestead exemption.
That's exactly right. I just want to hope, that's what my hope is, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so
Right.
exactly. So when I was writing stuff, I'm like, okay, well, they said we need to balance the bond along with the rate, but really we're going to have to do it even if with what we have right now.
The voters will have to approve potentially a tax increase when we propose the bond, right?
Right.
So if we add the homestead exemption right now, it decreases the revenues, which increases the likelihood that we take a bond to the people with a proposed tax increase, which then lowers the chances of the bond passing and lowers the probability of us being able to fund these road projects. So that's the analysis that we need to do and make sure that when we're considering this, that we just have all the facts. This isn't failure to disclose, this is making sure that we have all the facts as we make that decision. But we're not proposing, I'm not proposing that, and I don't think staff is going to bring forward a request to take some additional measure to the voters in order to, that's not what
We
that's
got
not
a
what
tax
it's
rate
about.
or the homestead. Okay, no, that's fine then. I just wanted to make sure, and I wanted to make clear that, because I know Councilmember Rizo made mention of a rate going down, but I wanted to have a good understanding, and I wanted other people on the dais to have a good understanding why we decrease that rate, not just because we're trying to be nice.
Well, the rate goes down every year. We've gone up a percentage for how many years now, Scott?
It was 58 cents per hundred in assessed valuation. It's now 50 cents. So the city of San Marcos's rate, you can.
I was just letting the citizens know that we've actually gone down as a city a little bit, while other cities around us, the county, the school district has gone up. And maybe, you know.
Well, do we know if they've gone up, or are we just saying that?
No, they've gone, the school district gone up.
Oh, the school
When you
district,
look
okay.
at your property tax, when you get at the end of the year, you see that they've gone up. So that's kind of where I was going at. And that's why, I mean, some of the cities have reached out, like San Marcos and Buda have tried to do what they can for the residents. While everything's going up, they're trying to do the homestead to try to help alleviate some of that burden. And that's something we could do here as a city as well. I was just showing that, you know, while other cities were going up, we actually went down a little bit. And now an added, you know, a homestead would actually help alleviate that burden a little bit more. And that's where I was going with that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, agenda item 29. I'm not reading this all. First reading, an ordinance granted to Universal Natural Gas LLC and its successors or signs for a period of 10 years from the effective date of this ordinance, non-exclusive franchise, and right to enter the public ways to install, operate, and maintain a distribution system, et cetera.
Mayor, Council, Jerry Hendricks, Assistant City Manager for the record. Before you is pretty much a standard natural gas franchise agreement between the city and Universal Natural Gas. It protects the rights of the city. It protects the rights of the natural gas company. It has been reviewed by city staff, city legal, and the staff and legal of the company. It's for the maximum 10 years. The charter allows for a franchise agreement and calls for a 5% franchise fee to be paid for the city. I'm available to answer any questions, and we have Richard Bard from the company here to answer questions as well.
All right, thank you, Jerry. This item does have a public hearing, so if there are no objections, I'm going to open up the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? All right, seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Hendricks or the applicant? Councilor Flores-Kell.
Thank you. I guess I would like you to explain this to me, like I know nothing about this, because I've tried to read it and I just don't understand. It looks like what they want to do is put some kind of gas line in.
Right. They're going to be a provider of natural gas to certain parts of the city. The map of those areas was in the backup.
I have that. So is that going to be like a non-compete? Can somebody else provide gas in that area?
No.
No. So we're going to be limited. How does that benefit? The residents? If there's only one, I mean, for example.
We currently have two other companies providing natural gas in Kyle. That's CenterPoint Gas and Texas Gas. There's also another company that has a franchise agreement that is not currently providing gas.
So we'll go from 3 to 1?
No, we'll go from 3 to 4.
Okay, that was my confusion. I was afraid we were just gonna have to use this one, but if this increases to 4, okay. So they're gonna have to create a line and bury it?
Right, and they'll do that through the permit process with our Public Works Department.
Okay, because my concern is it goes right by the medical center. And do we have any idea of like what they think about this? Did we get any kind of feedback from them?
No, we're not required to do that.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah, yeah.
So you're thinking big gas line.
I'm just thinking anything that can
So
explode.
this is smaller gas line. They run throughout all the cities. So it's something that comes through and then it goes to decompression in smaller areas, right? So this isn't a big Kinder Morgan type gas line. This is actually a small gas line that runs through all cities. So it's nothing that you have to really fear. Now, if a construction company hits it, then you have a little bit of a mess and, but that's something they can cut off quick. You just hope nobody gets hurt, but nothing really large.
These will be laid in our public right-of-ways after review by our Public Works Department or Engineering Department.
Okay, and it looks like those pipelines are gonna go from 16 to 30 inches in between, like, it looks like some are 16, some are 20, and then some are 30.
And then Mr. Bard.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Appreciate you guys taking up this agenda item. My name is Richard Bard with Universal Natural Gas, Vice President of Engineering for the company, for the record. So these are distribution lines, as you mentioned, roughly ranging in size from 2 inches to 8 inch in diameter. Run at distribution pressure, so low pressure, exactly as you mentioned, no high pressure gas.
Okay. With that said, I would like to make a motion to approve agenda item, whatever this is.
29.
30.
Is it 30?
29.
Sorry, I don't have my agenda right in front of me.
Second.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It's 29.
Yeah, you're
All right, motion by Councilmember Flores Kale, seconded by Councilmember Tobias,
29.
that we approve agenda item number 29. Is there discussion on the motion?
I have a question.
Councilmember Parsley.
So, do you mind explaining to me if this is going to be natural gas that is going to be competing with any of the ones that we have right now? Is it going to be residential, commercial, or not for public use?
It will be installed in the neighborhoods that are listed on the map. Typically, the natural gas companies don't compete with each other in specific neighborhoods.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Council, just a reminder that the charter requires 2 readings of franchise agreement, so this will be on the consent agenda at the next meeting.
Okay, all opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right, next up, agenda item number 30, consider possible action on an ordinance of the City of Kyle making a finding of a special benefit to the property of in the Kyle 57 Public Improvement District. This item has a public hearing. Mr. Snyder.
Hi, Mayor, Council, John Snyder with P3 Works, the city's PID administrator. This is the service and assessment plan. It's really just an update to the preliminary service and assessment plan that we brought before you either last meeting or the meeting before. The only things that have been updated are the numbers and tables, and they're just updated to reflect the pricing on the bonds that occurred earlier today.
Okay, this item has a public hearing. If there are no objections, I'm going to open the public hearing now. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. It's now closed. Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. We approve agenda item number 30. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item 31, consider possible action on an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the City of Kyle, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bond, Series 2022 for the Kyle 57 Public Improvement District. This item also has a public hearing. Mr. Snyder.
All right. So FMS bonds went in the market this morning and priced the bonds. They came back very favorably. It was an average coupon of about 4.95%, which is in today's market, that was better than expected. So there was additional money that was made available for the project fund to fund improvements. But overall, successful pricing and positive feedback from the investors.
All right, thank you. This item also has a public hearing. If there are no objections, I'm going to open the public hearing now. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Parsley. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item 32, consider and possible action to approve an infrastructure and property conveyance agreement, property conveyance escrow agreement, transportation improvement design and permitting and construction agreement in the brick and mortar district by and between Plum Creek Development Partners, LTD, Mountain Plum, LTD, and the city of Kyle, Texas, and the first and second amendments to letter agreement confirming allocation of land to satisfy land dedication of Plum Creek land to the city of Kyle, Texas. Mr. Sellers.
That's a mouthful, and the agreement's a lot more.
That's right.
The council and TERS board for the last probably year have been working on this agreement, and we're happy to bring it forward in final format. This agreement resolves multiple issues that have been outstanding from both the city as well as the underlying landowner. There are several things I will just briefly mention as part of this agreement. So the TERS board and council talked about issuing an $8 million bond for roadways within the brick and mortar district. And this agreement will ensure that those bonds, or the road right away first, will be dedicated to the city. Those roads will then be designed and constructed throughout the brick and mortar district. So as part of the agreement, the underlying landowner will dedicate that right-of-way to the city. The city would authorize the bonds. Then I'll call it Plum Creek for convenience. They would deliver several parcels to the city. There are certain parcels, a restaurant parcel adjacent to the Heroes Memorial Park, a 11-acre plus or minus soccer parcel that is adjacent to the existing 22-acre soccer parcel. That is at the northern end of Cromwell. Additionally, there is a Class A office parcel, roughly 1.75 acres, I believe, that is immediately south of the La Verde Park. There is additional land for a hotel convention center parcel that is going to be in a location to be determined along Cromwell. Finally, there are infrastructure, or what we mentioned impact fees before. There were impact fee credits due to the developer from years and years ago. This agreement resolves about $1.9 million of impact fee credits that were due from the city back to the developer. So this agreement also basically absolves the city of that final payment. So those are the key deal points of this agreement. Again, we're happy to bring it forward, and with all the land conveyances, we can now start moving forward on design for sportsplex and different economic development deals, and as well as the roads. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sellers. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Flores-Cal.
Thank you. So this bond is $8 million. $8 million is going to go to roads
Correct.
that the developer was supposed to pay, but the city's going to pay instead, or bond out for it.
So ultimately, the developer would pay, and then the city would have also been due those impact fees, as well as not have the additional land. So we took the equivalent value of the land and then offset it with the cost of the roadways.
So when did the TERS board meet to decide that?
When was the last meeting? A year ago. I want to say a year
Yeah,
and a half.
this item will come back before the TERS
It will.
board for ratification.
Correct.
Oh, the $8 million bond will?
Correct.
For the roads?
Yes, there's still a lot more forthcoming. This just sets the
No, I just know
parameters.
because it's been a long time
has
since
been a
there's
long
been a
time.
meeting,
It
and
was-
so
yeah.
I was kind of
It was
confused.
last year.
This basically is the trigger to call a TERS board meeting, to have them come back and start the process.
Okay, so this bond is for who? It's going to be for the brick and mortar?
So these are city roads. So ultimately, we do own these roads, and it will be not only the road, but all the associated infrastructure that goes with building them.
So why are we spending $8 million on an area that's newly developed, but we don't do the same for the rest of the city?
Well, we're about to spend $200 million for
No,
us. This year.
I understand that,
I
but what I'm
understand
saying
the
is we
question.
have $8 million on here that could go a long way to people who've already been here and not to new development. And so that, for me, is really concerning.
Well, to clarify, the $8 million is not going to the developer. The $8 million is a trade for $8 million in value that comes back to the city. So I've never seen an agreement where we issued financial resources to pay for infrastructure and received in compensation, in addition to the infrastructure, the equal amount of land. This is very consistent with the visioning workshop that we went out in Frisco, and the name of the game was acquire property. We've been looking for ways to acquire property so that we can then, in turn, use that property to incentivize world-class products and amenities for the community, such as a regional sportsplex, vertical Class A hotel, and convention, vertical Class A office, hotel and convention center, and restaurant parcels. So,
And those will all belong to the city?
Yes.
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 Okay.
So there's roughly 15 acres that the city will be receiving this, plus the offset of about 2 million of
Councilman Bradshaw.
credits due.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 32.
Second. Motion by Councilman Bradshaw, seconded by the mayor. Is there further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Next up, agenda item 33, consider impossible action on a resolution of the City of Council of the City of Kyle, Texas, accepting a petition for the creation of Porter Country Public Improvement District. Ms. Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amber Lewis, Assistant City Manager for the record. You've seen many resolutions like these before. This is a resolution accepting the PID petition for Porter Country and calling a public hearing. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you at this time.
Thank you. Is there, does anybody have any questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale, that we approve agenda item 33. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Before we go to item 34, are there any objections to item 30 and 31 being finally passed? They're not listed as first reading. That's how we received it from Bickerstaff, but they are items that would otherwise have to come back. And so is there any objection to finally passing these items? All right, seeing none, they are finally passed. Next up, agenda item number 34, consider impossible action to retain the services of Mark McCliney from Samco Capital as the city's financial advisor. Mr. Sellers.
Mayor, I'm going to speak to 34 and 35 together, if that's okay. So, Council recently sent out an email about the need for additional financial analysis. We did talk about this just even tonight with...
Scott, let me go ahead and pull up item 35 if you're going to talk about them both, just so we can be careful. I'm not reading this all out, but this is agenda item 35, consideration and approval of a resolution approving an engagement agreement for bond counsel legal services with Norton Rose Fulbright.
Okay. Go ahead. What I just said. So we have done quite a bit of research into financial advisors and bond counsel in the area. Talked to several industry professionals who have been helping us and will continue to help us through our PIDs, TERSs, development agreements, et cetera. But all of our special financing, we have a very large amount of debt that is going to be brought forward through these road bonds. Now, more than ever, the need for very detailed, complex, and accurate financial information analyses is warranted for our city. So with that, I am proposing that the council consider Samco Capital as our new financial advisor and Norton Rose Fulbright as the city's bond counsel, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sellers? The applicants are here as well if somebody has questions for them. Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Thank you. Is Perez available?
He's not here this evening.
Is there a reason why our financial director is not here to answer questions about the city's finances? No, in that case, I'd like to make a motion to postpone agenda item 34 and 35, 34 and 35 until we can speak with our finance director.
All right, it's been motioned to postpone agenda items 34 and 35. Is there a second? All right, motion fails for lack of a second. I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 34. I'm going to take them separately because we have to have specific language on agenda item 34.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilor Ellison. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilor Parsley.
Do you mind explaining why we are changing financial advisors?
Why we are? You know, it's just time in the city's maturation, I think, to move forward to more complex analysis. There have been, you know, several debt issuances in the past, et cetera, that we have used a team, a financial advisor and bond counsel. And in this case, this team that I am putting before you has been recommended very highly to come forward as a team of analysis. So really, it's just to move forward with higher level analyses.
Did we interview any other companies for financial advisors?
Didn't interview other companies per se, interviewed industry professionals who made several, you know, strong recommendations for this team. So interviewed this team.
Have we paid anything that we will have to collect from the other company we were using?
With the Kyle 57 PID tonight, those are the last projects for the last team, and so they will continue, they will be compensated for their work with that. So kind of the time for a clean break, especially as we move into this road bond project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Florescale.
So the city just voted in the last meeting to go forward with a transaction. So why didn't we bring it up back then?
With a transaction?
There was at the last meeting, there was action regarding the bond council, I believe. And so I guess I'm confused as to why we allowed that to happen. It's only been 3 weeks, so I don't understand what happened within the last 3 weeks to cause this kind of want for change.
I'm not sure which transaction, but this was actually a clean break for those projects to be separated, the kind of the old projects and moving forward with the inception of new projects.
Okay, so I have a few questions. So why is Perez not here?
Perez asked if he could go home this evening.
And so why didn't Perez sponsor this item?
And this is my decision.
Is an RFP or an RFQ required?
No, ma'am, this is professional services agreements.
Okay, did anybody speak with our current representation?
I did.
Okay, and what reason for obtaining other services did you give them?
Well, I gave them the last couple of meetings have been recently on my mind as far as I don't feel like we have been served with adequate representation.
And how come this wasn't brought to council's attention?
Council had a TERS workshop at this, after the last council meeting, which really brought forward the need for representation that was much more prepared with the statute.
So I remember
experience
that,
with the
yeah.
Attorney
I remember
General.
that meeting. And in that meeting, I heard Mayor Mitchell speak much longer than I heard the attorney speak. And on top of that, she
I'd like to interrupt and call the question. Is there a second?
I'm not done asking my questions.
Is there a second on calling the question?
Second.
All right, the question is called. That is a non-debatable motion. It calls for a roll call vote. The roll call vote is not on the item. It is to cease debate and then call for a vote on the item.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Florescale,
Nay.
Bradshaw,
Aye.
Tobias,
Aye.
Parsley, Rizo.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-1. The item before us is called. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. I'd like to make a motion to, hang on, let me read it out correctly on agenda item number 35. We have to, this 34 was the motion that was brought forward. We brought them both forward together for discussion. That action took place for 34. 35, I was informed earlier, requires specific language, so I want to read that out. I move that the City Council approve an engagement agreement for bond counsel legal services with Norton Rose Fulbright US LLP. Is there a second? All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Bradshaw. Is there discussion on agenda item number 35? All those in favor say, I'm sorry, Councilmember Ellison.
So I'm just going to give my thoughts on this, and it might cover the previous item here as well. You know, at the end of the day, I think that from my position, I'll just speak from my position. I'm about getting results. I'm about getting quality analysis in order to make strong decisions on this board. And we lean heavily on our one staff member, Mr. Sellers, to provide us with results and quality analysis and everything else we need to do in order to make decisions on this board. And if our city manager does not feel like that there is anybody on his staff, professional services contracted, that is not meeting the expectation of the gold standard that we expect here in the city of Kyle, the amount of analysis we expect here in order to make these decisions, and, you know, as well as a presence. You know, I've been on this council since 2017. I knew both of these individuals. So this is not, I can tell you, it wasn't an easy decision for me. I can't imagine how difficult a decision this was for Mr. Sellers, when we've worked with these folks for a long time now. But for him to make a professional decision to change course and go with a different firm on these different things, I think it speaks to the volume of he's trying to meet the expectations of this council. And so as tough as that is, to make a professional services change, I do commend you for making this tough decision, even if it was ultimately it's your decision. And even if your staff disagrees with you, you're the ultimate accountability to us. And so that is how I feel about this. And that's, I think, you know, if we bring on these new folks, I didn't get to ask Mr. McClenny to step up and speak, but from the bond council, we need presence here. And whether that's at our meetings and our executive session items, whether that just means being virtual and turn on the camera and be there for us to ask questions of you in order to make the decisions we need to make. That is highly important. And so we need that presence. We need all council members should be able to know you by name and know what you look like. That is important. And so once again, I hope there's no hard feelings with the previous firms. I know that there probably will be, but at the end of the day, I'm here and accountable to the residents to make the best decisions I can, to get the most proper analysis I can, and to get the results that we expect of this council, of this city manager and his staff. And so that is how I feel about that, and that's why I'm in support of this difficult decision.
Thank you. Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you. I do want to second what Councilmember Ellison was saying. I've been in council for 6 months, about 6 months, and I had no idea who our financial advisors were. So I appreciate you bringing, you know, a better group to the table.
Any other discussion?
Well, Mayor, if I can just say to echo that comment, I'm sure they're listening, and I want to tell Chris and Greg, you know, they're friends of mine, and it was not easy. So thank you for recognizing that. It's, you know, these are hard decisions, and we have a long history working together, and you know, things change in the course of business.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Flores-Kell.
I just want to say I think the set and switch of services is a bad look for the city. I think it's going to make it difficult for people to want to do service with us. I think as a council, who we should be leaning on as far as a financial direction goes should be our financial director. anybody that knows city business understands that even though a city manager has his hands in a lot of different things, he is not a professional in one. So to take Perez out of this, I think is kind of not doing justice to Perez in order to allow him to provide his opinion. And so as far as that goes, I'm really disappointed that I did not get a chance to speak with him. I don't know if that was on purpose, or I don't know if President returned my call because he was just too busy. But I'm really disappointed, and I'm sad for the people services that were leaving, because they've been with the city for a really long time. And I feel like it could have been done in a little more professional manner.
All right, anyone else? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Motion carries 6-1. Trying to get back to it next, hang on. All right, now we're going to take up, next up, agenda item number 26, discussion regarding possible text amendments and/or alternative traffic calming measures to be considered in single residential zoned areas, including but not limited to R11, R12, R13, R1A, M1, M2, M3. Councilor Ellison.
Thank you. I mainly just put those in there so you would have to read them.
Right. It's not as bad as the one I just had.
Thank you. So there's a lot to this topic, and I appreciate the council allowing me to do this a little later in the agenda, because I don't expect a decision to necessarily be made at this point, but I am asking for some buy-in from the council. So a couple of meetings ago, there was an agenda item brought forward about a Conestoga Road in Stagecoach Crossing. And, I know Mr. Coulterman came and spoke on that, and he talked about the speedway that runs through there. And I remember listening to that, and I said, wow, where have I heard that umpteen million times? I've heard that from Amberwood residents. They have a fun little name for Amberwood Loop. Councilmember Tobias could probably tell us what it's called in Kensington Trails. There's subdivisions all over this city.
Downing Raceway.
Yeah, there you go. We have subdivisions all over this city where residents are concerned and complaining and about the traffic that comes through there. And what my concern is, in watching that kind of play out, was to, I think we get the impulse to try and solve those problems because we empathize with our residents. But sometimes the impulsive decision to solve those is not always the best decision based on the data and information and other tools that we have at our disposal. And so I wanted to bring to council's attention, I did provide 2 links in the backup material, one from the U.S. Department of Transportation, as well as another one from a website called nacto.org that talks about urban street design and guides and other ways of traffic calming mechanisms there are out there. Now, I'll be clear, I actually already have my mind made up on what I would like to see happen. However, there are a lot of things that go into play into this, and I do want to include council in on this. Sure, all of you all went through both of those websites and reviewed everything. Certainly, Complete Streets, designing what they called road diets to make the roads narrow, other different mechanisms to slow down traffic. There are also things called speed cushions, not speed bumps, but speed cushions that are more narrow that the typical vehicles would have to go over, but are narrow enough that emergency vehicles don't have to go over, which has been a concern in the past. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Is that what that's for?
Check out, yeah. And I've seen this incorporated.
I always try, but I never can quite get it.
Yeah, you can't, because that's the idea. But fire trucks and larger emergency vehicles, that is why those things are built that way. And there are ones that are constructed where there's pieces and parts that, obviously there may be maintenance over time that makes that maintenance expense less, rather than using a speed bump that one has no brake in there, so everybody has to go over it, including emergency vehicles. It's a higher bump, so you kind of get a little bit more noise as well with that. There are a number of different things to look at with this. And so my proposal to council tonight is not to make a rash decision on any number of these speed calming initiatives, but I'm going to bring something up. We might have forgot this term. It's called a task force. Yes, the old task force. That I would like for us to, and certainly if council wants to go another way and make a decision tonight, I'm certainly up for the conversation. But I think it would be fair of us to put a task force together with all the task force policy that we created several months back with the timeline and all those different things, and include staff to work through and discuss the various different options to bring back to council with those various different options, and perhaps most specifically a recommendation for council to consider. So without being really long-winded and kind of going more into these websites and different things and what they talk about, that is the gist of the situation I'm bringing forward. So as we can have not only implement new things as we bring on new subdivisions and things like that, being particular to subdivisions is where I want to focus now, but also so creating good policy for the future, but also look at ways that perhaps we can go back in existing places to maybe incorporate some of these ideas as well. So I'll yield the floor.
Scott, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, Council. So appreciate you bringing this forward, Councilmember Ellison. We do have an internal task force. You know, and they for years have brought forward recommendations based on TMUTCD, traffic warrants, et cetera. When we talked about this item and didn't necessarily have the context, they did want to just be available and maybe share some comments now about this item.
So that's Harper and Leon?
Harper, Leon, Jeff, and Kyle, and Chief Taylor. So the other three are online, and then Harper is here in the room. But if any of them would like to at least, you know, mention their feelings now about road construction.
Is that okay with you, Councilor
Leon?
Welcome it. All right, Harper, I'm looking at you. Leon?
Leon is here, yeah. Harper,
Yep.
Leon, Jeff, and Chief Taylor. Chief Barnett, Chief Taylor.
And I just have a question for clarity. Your proposal, you're talking about changing our, sort of like our requirements for how roads are designed moving forward, like subdivision roads and things like that? Is that what you're trying to get at?
That could be one possibility.
Because like the International Fire Code, we changed it for all of that to try to have sort of an impact on traffic speeds and emergence. So it's kind of a similar thing, but you're saying you want to, is there some, but that's kind of what you're getting at, is like a sort of a policy that would be in effect at staff level as subdivisions are coming forward, that they would have to follow these rules.
That could very much be one part of the recommendation, absolutely.
Harper Wilder, Public Works Director, for the record. So the question that you were asking, that what exactly did you want from me on that? I'm sorry. I was trying to make sure I answered you correctly.
I wasn't asking you anything, actually. Scott, I think Scott brought you up.
So the speed hump discussion has been brought for many years. Matter of fact, and I went and did some research on it, you know, just to make sure. It was brought up a long time ago, 2011. It went to council, I believe. I went to San Marcos and looked at some of their speed humps. And as Mr. Ellison said, there's different speed deterrents out there. The speed hump, if we had to go to something, that would be what I would suggest, versus a speed bump, which is a very abrupt hit. It's a short and narrow kind of taller obstruction in the roadway where there's more chance for there to be issues. If we were going to go to something, it would be a speed hump, which is basically like a speed pillow. It has a very gradual, short height and tapered out over a certain length, and then goes back down the same manner. It's not as abrasive to the traffic. San Marcos has several of them. We looked at some down there that are done with asphalt. They used to do them with the rubber mats, but the problem with those, the anchors that they put down in the ground would always get wallered out, and it's a continual maintenance issue that they had to deal with. So I would recommend the asphalt ones. We also had Mr. Earp brought forth, the speed hump policy a long time ago, but the problem was I don't believe it ever went through council and passed. Council, I went back looking at notes because I had the Public Works Committee also. It went back, council sent it back to the different committees. My committee was not necessarily for it, but didn't have a problem if HOA were to fund it and bring it about, or if private owners, I think it was 80% of the residents on this certain block all came forth and said that they wanted it, and then there were certain criteria. It couldn't be in front of a driveway, it couldn't be across from somebody who did not want it. There were many different things that guidelined where it could be located at. Not near an intersection, so far from an intersection. Couldn't be on a curve. Any kind of obstructions that would make it a safety issue. So all those came about a long time ago, and then they were discussed, and it never kind of went to fruition. I don't believe that I recall, unless somebody finds something else that happened and occurred in council. So that's kind of a little history there and background. I know, and Chief Barnett, Chief Taylor could talk more, but I know that back in the day, there was a lot of concerns over the first responders, emergency vehicles, and how they would be affected in the maintenance of the speed bumps, having to go over those regularly. There's also questions of if your vehicle were to contact that speed bump and maybe lose control, what kind of safety or danger did that put people in possibly? And then Mr. Earp also mentioned one where I believe it was an issue that they weren't bringing about. James, do you recall? It was an issue where they weren't using it because of the liability factor, basically, what it was.
I don't know if that's still relevant or
Yeah,
not.
no, that was something that came up also. So there's been many things along the way. I do agree that there's issues with speeding in the neighborhoods and everything, and either way we go, I would suggest the speed humps or speed pillows versus anything else. That's just my opinion.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Ellison. I'm very familiar with the speed pillows. I actually like those. I think they do quite a bit. I have to drive over one every day in South Austin, and it actually does slow people down at that intersection because it's kind of a dangerous intersection. And then further down, there's an intersection that doesn't have it, and there's always wrecks in that other intersection because they don't have those pillows and people are speeding through there. So I think it's a great suggestion. I think people's driving habits have changed. We've got now an influx of more residents in our city, in our roadways. People are still trying to commute at a high rate of speed, and I think we have to do something in the city to keep everyone safe. I just feel that I've seen and I've received a lot of emails from residents who are really, really concerned and want something done now. And I love the idea of the task force. But really, I'd love to see something happen in real time. Is this something you could your team could build, Harper?
Yes, sir. That's one of the things that we did when we went down to San Marcos. They have what I call a coupon. It's a frame, a metal frame that, it's basically the size of what it is. And they go out there and they cut out that rectangular area. They lay that frame down. They fill it up with asphalt up to the top of that frame. And then they taper off the edges. Okay. It's something that can be done with relative ease. I think some of the determinations is where they would be placed and what roads. We've talked, Leon and I are steadily looking at people's subdivisions where we see it mainly as long roads where there's no kind of stop signs or anything of that nature.
Exactly.
That's where people are having the issues with the speeding, it seems like, from our point of view.
So my second question is to Chief Taylor. Chief Taylor, do you have a width of speed pillow that you would like to see implemented? Because I don't know the width of your trucks. That's kind of why I'm asking you.
We would have to look that up. We do have in our fire department access road guidelines and the fire code, there's only two types that are allowed. It's the speed lumps and the speed table. The table is like on Sampson where the golf cart crossing is, that's a speed table. And then the lumps are what Councilor Councilman Ellison was talking about.
Okay,
So that one, the one where that's split in the middle?
yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with. I think what I would like to see as a council member is the city adopt the speed tip pillows right now, but then create a task force to really identify those areas that are needed. That's just my thoughts right now. That's kind of what I'd like to see happen this evening. Thank you.
Leon, do you have anything you want to add?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Leon Barber, City Engineer. I agree with Harper in that we don't want to do asphalt speed tables or whatever that are not made of asphalt. I've seen the others in action, and they do come apart. So that's a definite, I'm supporting them on using them out of asphalt. The only thing I would ask this task force, if it's created, it sets specific criteria, because I'm going to get most of the requests and the complaints and the suggestions on where we're going to put these things. So I need definite criteria to be able to look at those and say, yes, it does meet, or no, it doesn't meet. That's what we do with the multi-way stop signs. We have several criteria that we look at. Typically, if you have 5 accidents, for example, in a particular intersection, that pretty well justifies the installation of a multi-way stop. If you don't have that, then you look at the number of traffic counts. If you don't have that, then you look at blind corners. And then ultimately, the last warrant that you would look at, the engineer can make the decision, say, you know what, I think we need one here. So that leaves it up to the engineer, but that puts a lot of pressure on me to make that decision. So I need definite criteria if we're going to do that. So that's only I wanted to offer.
Well, perhaps the 4 members of the current task force plus 3 of this body would be just nearly perfect for bringing back that exact proposal.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I wanted to ease staffs, because I can hear both you and Harper and talking about, I'm sure Chief's about to come on here and say the same thing. Part of the task force policy is having staff liaisons. So that you all were going to be looped into this to give your opinion in order to counsel the members of the task force anyway, to have this discussion. I've already had a significant discussion with you all as well. And so I appreciate you all providing the input publicly and for all of council to hear tonight. But that is another part of the policy when we create a task force, is having staff liaison that would be relative to whatever topic it is. And I couldn't imagine that task force being formed without at least you 2 gentlemen and probably maybe even our chief.
Yeah.
And Councilmember, I did talk to Hayes County. They do install speed pillows or speed control devices. They have a policy that I have a copy of that I've been looking at, so they do have quite a bit of criteria in that. Maybe it wouldn't hurt at one of our meetings to have one of them come from the county and just kind of tell us the good, the bad, and ugly of doing these kinds of things.
Any objection from the Chief Taylor or Leon or Harper or Chief Barnett, if you're on, to serving on the task force to help bring this policy back to us with council?
I can serve, no problem.
Chief
Same
Barnett?
here, Barnett. Yes, sir. I'll be ready.
Well, I would assume the 2 of you would like to be a part of that conversation, if that's okay. Is there anyone else on the council who'd like to participate?
Participate.
Councilor Tobias?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to.
I was just going to say, within that motion, we have to be clear on a number of different things. So I just want to remind the council of what we would need in that motion per our task force policy that we adopted. So 1 to 3 members, so we have that. We need to clearly define the scope of what we're doing. Task force will report back to council on a regular basis. Clearly define dissolve date or deliverable of each task force. We would have single member districts would have first right of refusal, but since this is kind of citywide thing, I guess that rule may not be so relevant there as well. And yeah, so we just need to make sure those things are in the motion as well.
Do you have a time frame for when you want to try to have something brought back?
So I'm looking at the 2 other members here. I'd like to do this I'd like to bring something back at one of our July meetings. If that's not too quick for you all, we just need to get on it. Certainly we can meet virtually. We don't always have to be in the same place. I'm committed to meeting any time of the day that works for you all. Sorry, staff. I would say by the 2nd meeting in July, we have something.
That's good. That's fine with me because to add to everything, that is one of the biggest concerns we've had. I'm sure all throughout the whole city, but Councilman Ellison says it correctly, especially in District 6. We have a lot of open streets, a lot of wide streets, got a lot of students that walk home and so forth and catch buses. And so I think this is we have to look at this now as a public safety concern and issue, especially with all the heavy traffic that we got going. So if we can get something maybe hopefully implemented maybe by August from the city standpoint, maybe we can have it ready by the time school starts, and we could be able to slow some of this traffic down on that end. We can pinpoint certain areas throughout the city, certain neighborhoods maybe, certain side streets, and we'll go from there.
I'm hoping that the scope also includes a policy related to traditional neighborhood design, so that we design the streets the correct way from the beginning, as opposed to streets that allow for speeding. It should never be the case where we go back and have to pay for installing infrastructure in streets that were originally that should have been designed so that there wasn't an issue to begin with. So that if they want to make the streets wide and straight like a highway, that they need to install these speed tables or speed humps right away in the new subdivisions, or put in traffic circles, or curvilinear streets, or just all the other kinds of traffic control devices that, So I don't know if that's possible to create a policy that takes that into consideration, but that would be my hope as well, that you'd bring that back.
Then say that we add one more staff member, if it's all right with Mr. Sellers, Mr. Will Atkinson, to that group as well. And I just want to be clear, staff, I know that that's now 5 staff members. The most pertinent people that need to be there are the 3 of us. And if you all can't make every time we try to schedule a meeting between now and then, we understand that. Certainly, if you have ideas, you can email those in. Certainly, you can be virtual and all that stuff. But I think in adding that to the scope, I think it would be helpful to have our senior planner a part of that.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to thank Chief Taylor and everybody for being here during this discussion. I want to thank Councilor Ellison for bringing this forward. I also want to thank Councilor Kale for bringing this to our attention last meeting and putting this on agenda. It got the wheels on the bus rolling, so say. But I think this is, I see the consensus throughout council that, safety of our residents is #1 priority, and I'm really excited about this moving forward. So thank you all.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to establish a task force related to alternative traffic calming measures to be considered in the various residential districts proposed in this item, and include in that task force Chief Taylor, Chief Barnett, Leon Barba, Harper Wilder, Will Atkinson, Robert Rizo, Dex Ellison, and Michael Tobias, and set as an expectation that the task force would bring back a policy as outlined in this discussion and recommendations as outlined in this discussion by the second meeting in July. Second. Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilor Ellison. Is there discussion on the motion? Did I get that? Was that good? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, agenda item number 36, consider possible action to approve a resolution of the City of Kyle, Texas, amending resolution number 1273 and restating the City of Kyle rules of the City Council. So I have been wanting to bring forward multiple proposed changes to help clarify some of the rules that are already in place per the city charter, and also appeal to the council to adopt certain policies that are beholden, that are within the purview of this council to establish. And so rather than just sort of spitballing why, I thought if there are no objections, I'd like to go through the proposed changes and read the main ones. There's basically 3 main sections. Read them and explain why I worded the changes the way that I did, what I'm hoping to accomplish with those changes, and then allow for feedback and a vote or no vote. So the first proposed change is as it relates to the order of the agenda. Last year, council made a change to require that council items go to the beginning of every agenda, and it's the wording was to put council items at the beginning of whatever council requested or whatever section the agenda item belongs to. There was some, initially, some desire on my part to create additional sections so that I could clarify and not just essentially put council items at the beginning of every single meeting. There were a lot of reasons for that, but ultimately I felt like that wasn't really following the spirit of what this body put forward, and for me to add sections did feel a little bit underhanded, even though I believed that it was the right thing to do. So I have since changed that, but I do want to come back and propose something slightly different, but that still takes into account what I heard in that meeting was the primary issue, and that is making sure that if there are reasonable if there's a reasonable council desire to have their item placed higher up, that they would have an expectation that so long as it's reasonable, that would take place. And so the way I reworded it is that agenda order is at the discretion of the mayor and city manager and will generally follow the following format: presentations and proclamations first, then city business, then council business. And if a council member wishes to request an item be placed in a specific location on the agenda, he or she should make the request in writing concurrently with the agenda request and shall include an explanation. And the mayor or city manager shall accommodate the request if it is deemed reasonable and not harmful to the flow of the meeting. And so, for example, the items that council brought forward this time, one was a reconsideration item related to a zoning. And had it been up to me, I would have placed that further down behind other items that were getting their first reading as opposed to a reconsideration item. Other items that council may propose, like that would be an unvetted item that has not been brought before the council before, might find its way below items that have been being prepared for months or years, even in some cases. Major contracts where we have paid staff members that are here specifically for those items, and also folks that are here to present and or deal with those kind of issues. And so I know that there's no perfect scenario here, but I believe that the better way to handle it, as opposed to creating a bunch of different sections and trying to navigate that from that standpoint, would just be to allow for the flow of the agenda to be set by the mayor and council, but with the understanding that, for example, if a council member knows that there are multiple residents that are coming specifically to hear on a particular topic or to present, for example, on a particular topic, they can make that request, and those requests would be deemed valid. I'm going to move through them all just so you can hear all my thoughts up front.
Could we work one at a time?
You'd rather do one at a time?
I'd rather do one at a time.
Okay. Are there questions or comments on that item? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm reading through this one, and what I'd like to see removed is agenda order at the discretion of the, and then, so it reads, mayor and city manager will follow the following format, is what I'd love to see there, instead of all the other language on there. It's just my opinion on that.
Okay. Councilmember Parsley?
Thank you. I think I have an issue because I agree with the format that you're requesting, but I don't think I should put an explanation on why I want an item to be put first or last. And I don't know exactly what harming the flow of the meeting is going to be, and if putting an item is going to be reasonable or not. I have people who don't come to the meetings, but they are watching as we speak, and they usually message me, and I don't like to make them wait for hours. Like having an item that is going to take till 11 p.m. I'd much rather having items that are for council at the beginning, because residents are the ones that are paying taxes and we work for, rather than having developers having items at the beginning when they're basically making money out of us. So that to me is a problem. I don't want to have to give explanations to the city manager or the mayor on why I need an item to be at the beginning. I don't agree with that. That's just my comment.
Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Thank you. I believe the meetings have been moving along fairly well, so I'm kind of confused as to why this change. I feel like I've had no complaints with myself. I feel like as far as the structure, I think it's great. If you want to do it, I'm on board. If deemed necessary that we have to have a presentation proclamation. And what kind of confuses me is, city business versus council business, because ultimately council business is city business. And so looking at this addition, it looks really discretionary, which was, I think, the issue that we had the first time going around. And so that's why we took a vote, and it passed to place agenda items that council wanted to put at the top. And again, I believe it's worked really well. The last couple of meetings, we look up and you see developers everywhere, and I would much rather have them wait than our residents. So that's my input.
Other discussion on that item? It's not only developers that are waiting on their items, it's staff. So the direction of is that staff has to wait until items that they are presenting are completed. And so it's not to say that each individual item that a council member might request would not come to the front. There should just be some kind of mechanism in place for discretion on the flow, so that the general idea being that the majority of folks that are here, the goal is to get them where their items that they're here for, that they drove here for, or that they're being paid to be here for, are able to get resolved the fastest. And so, but that being said, the desire here is not to say that council items can't come forward faster, but rather if there are there have been scenarios where the flow just wasn't right. And based on this particular rule and the way that it was put in there, there was no ability to change it. And items were being put at the beginning that I did not believe should be there. And I think that it caused issues with these meetings. But this is the proposal I wanted to make, so it's just my proposal. Is there other discussion? Councilor Tobias.
Okay, in hindsight, what it is that all these items, whether it was business or council member agenda items, they just became a large debate that lasted sometimes an hour for one item. Yes, it has been run smoothly these past few council meetings. Again, we're getting through businesses, we're getting through each individual council member's agenda items that they want to bring forward. But just looking at the big picture of it all, the reason why they dragged out so long, these meetings, was everything became a debate. Everything took a long time, and a lot of times we didn't agree on both sides, and it just dragged on. With that, the way I'm looking at this here is the flow seems to be okay with me the way we're doing it as of now. I know I changed it last time to be able to become more of an olive branch, to be able to see if things work, because I'm more of somebody who, let's try something new. But again, I think when we talk about these things, I've always felt we still need to have time limits whenever we're bringing agenda items. I kind of researched the other day Los Angeles City Council meetings. And here it says, whenever the above members opens a debate, he or she has up to 6 minutes to open up their debate. Each of the remaining council members may then speak up to 3 minutes. And it would go twice. And then after the second time, then that was it. And then you make the motion, and then you move forward. And I think that's kind of what has happened through the year, is that we've continuously, like I guess what we're doing right now, is discussing these items. But my idea had always been is if we set parameters and set time limits on these agenda items, we can run through things a lot more quickly, not so much quickly, but more efficiently in that sense.
Yeah, time limits can be challenging. There have been, I agree that if it was something that we followed, that or we all have wanted to do, then it could make sense. But the main reason for allowing for an agenda to be set without the mayor or the city manager being forced to put certain items in certain spots, or that there are items that just are not yet vetted or that are council focused, such as the rules of council. You know, if it's not a vetted item, meaning one council member wants to bring forward and make a proposal, I don't think that it's right that we should lead off the meeting with that proposal and allow for that council to take up the time that they want to take up right off the top of the meeting when we have urgent, or I wouldn't say urgent, but when we have business that has been brought forward with a lot of resources. Our taxpayer dollars have gone in to bringing those items forward as well. They aren't just developer items, they're zoning. That's an item of public interest. They're contracts. That's an item of public interest. And so my general feeling has been for 6 years that those items that are vetted, that have council support, or that are ready to come before council for a vote should be the things that we take off the top after the presentations and proclamation. And then when we get towards the end of the item, the meeting, that's when we have the discussions about things that we are individually wanting to propose. And then we have an opportunity at that point to make a recommendation or a motion to bring something back. Like, for example, Councilmember Ellison's item just now that he put to the end, that we made a vote and put a task force on. When that policy comes back, that is by staff direction, and regardless of who sponsors it, that has a higher priority than what another council member wants to bring forward and just sort of throw out there. And so that's the whole idea for taking away the requirement that council items must be at the front and allowing for there to be more of a flow. But in the event that there's a specific reason why a council member wants their item placed higher up, that they can make that request. And the wording here is that the mayor or the city manager shall accommodate that request. The only reason why that we would potentially not accommodate that is if it was truly an unvetted item and the feeling became that it was a form of weaponizing the agenda or a desire to make speeches or something along those lines, to put folks on trial, to gain an audience, and those kind of things, which has been an issue with this dais for a considerable period of time. And I would like for this council to support the city manager and the mayor in putting those items, if they are being proposed, to the end of the agenda, so that the audience isn't here and we're not making those kinds of, having those kinds of debates and discussions in front of everyone who is here for all the other items except for that. That is absolutely sort of the core issue that is at hand. And so I tried to come up with wording that, yes, there is gray area in the wording, but the wording does lend itself to the council still having the confidence that as long as they don't have some kind of nefarious intent, that the mayor and the city manager will put the item wherever is proposed by that council member. Councilmember Flores-Cale.
Thank you. So, again, I feel like this flow is working. I feel like it was changed because there was abuse on that end. I feel like everything that you just said was great. But again, just 6 short months ago, we changed this because there was issues.
I agree.
Those issues have changed, and everything is good. So I don't understand why we want to change something that I think is working. If we have it in the rules of council that this is the way it has to be, but yet we can change it during the meeting, I think that's what's best. Because obviously it worked for Councilmember Ellison today. He was able to change his. So I find more faith in keeping it the way it is now and then having the ability to change it later than to have it discretionary and cause issues in the future. With that said, I'd like to make a motion to strike the changes in Rules of Council Agenda number 1.
All right, there's a motion to strike the agenda language in item number 1 under section B. Is there a second? We'll have to wait for a second. All right, motion fails for lack of a second. Councilor Ellison.
Thank you. So I'm in a middle place here. I'll admit, I'm not a fan of what I see written here. I'll admit that, I certainly hear my colleagues saying that things were abused, so that was the reason why we made a change. I also hear the mayor saying that he feels like the other way that it was being abused. So we all have feelings about where that's gone. I will also say that sometimes I feel like I'm in a different meeting than everybody else. When we changed the rules of council, this was back in January. Meetings still were going slow. We had an agenda item come up about how to speed up our agendas. What changed was the early motions and using the tools that we have at our disposal to make the meetings more efficient. So I would argue that it wasn't the change in the rules of council that changed that. It was us using the tools at our disposal to make the meetings go faster and perhaps us being not so long-winded when we speak about items. The next thing I will say is, I think, today was an interesting example. I hear my colleague here from District 2 say that, that was the option for, put my item at the top, like the rules go, and then I asked on that item to move it back down, and there still was a no for that. So, can't even get that, and the agenda item wouldn't even exist if I didn't bring it. So, there's a lot of things that I find really interesting about the arguments being made here. So here's where I'm at. So I stated that I'm not a fan of the language that's written here because I feel like there's a lot of subjectivity in particular positions, which was the reason why we went against this. So maybe I'm just spitballing here, so let me propose something. Nobody might not like it, but here's an option. So as opposed to the writing, which I hear Councilmember Parsley, that you have issues with that, and I can understand why. Perhaps there's an option of you did say you're in favor of the format that was presented by the mayor. What if instead of a written reasoning asking the mayor or the city manager with an explanation of why your agenda item should be moved up, and I hear the mayor comments about it not being vetted, not really being, introduced where there's other council buy-in or support, even if they end up not voting for it. What if we did in order to get your agenda item moved up beyond this format, you have to get a co-sponsor on your agenda item. So that way, that you have, and y'all already know, I'm not a big fan of talking to y'all offside this dais, but at the end of the day, if you want your item moved up, then you're gonna have to talk to somebody and explain to them the merits of why you should be in this additional item. And if you get a co-sponsor for that, then that automatically moves you up into the higher category of the agenda. Once again, just me sitting here listening to the back and forth of this conversation and trying to find a way forward and a compromise here, because I can understand both the mayor's concerns. I've heard them. He and I have debated them several times. But I also hear the very legitimate concerns of the member from District 5. So it's important for us to kind of take all these things in consideration, because I think that was the reason why in January we went such a hard line in the route, because we were frustrated as a council. But I do commend you for making an effort in this change in language. Like I said, I can get behind some of it, but I think some of it is a lot of subjectivity that we could probably find another way to allow for a council member to get their item moved up.
Well, so just to respond, I actually considered a co-sponsor version of this. My initial draft just basically just said that council members need co-sponsoring, or if they don't have co-sponsoring, then the mayor or city manager could deny an item. And so that just did not sound remotely correct at the time. It's different than what necessarily, you're talking about just a co-sponsor to move it forward. Right, so your proposal's much calmer, I guess, but the reality is, whether it's at the beginning or at the end, we have seen now with the value of motions and votes that we can move items up, we can move items back. And the will of council is really what's going to ultimately decide what order we take in these items in. So what the council doesn't, what individual council members don't know when they're proposing an item is, what is everyone else proposing? what are all the staff items that are being proposed? What are the factors that the city manager and the mayor are having to take into consideration when they're looking at 45 different items of different stages of being vetted, and of importance based on lots of different things. But, perhaps there can be an item at the beginning that, that just says order adjustments so that the council can make the mayor and the city manager decide the order. And if there's a request made, or whatever, even if it doesn't have to be in writing, but we give it our first go. It's just like the consent agenda. People pull items off the consent agenda, and you have that right to do that as well. But if you make so that there's an item at the beginning, if you don't like the way where your item was placed, before I just start in on all the items, there can be a motion to reorder any particular item or take any item out of order.
I actually really like that idea. Sorry, I'm speaking out of turn.
Yeah. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken who wishes to speak on that proposal? All right, Councilmember Florescale.
I thought that's the way it previously was. That still caused an issue. So before, I had asked if I could move my item up, and I was told no. And so then it went to council, and then I was told no again. So that's what caused the issue is.
Right, but that should be, the council will should be what prevails. And that's not the mayor. I really didn't try to write this to give the mayor a ton of reach here. It should be the council. So for example, one of us didn't want to move Councilmember Ellison's item, but the majority of us did.
But we have that with what we have now, with keeping council on top. We have that. So
Right.
in the same way you want to change it is the same way I feel safe keeping it the way it is. And so if we can change it for me to ask at the top, then other people can ask to go to the bottom. And that seems a little less discretionary.
Councilmember Bradshaw.
I just want to say that both Councilmember Ellison and everything that you just said, Mayor, were excellent compromises, and I could not even attempt to repeat the verbiage, but if one of y'all would make a motion for one of those things.
I'll make a motion that we out of the proposal that we strike agenda order is at the discretion of, and begin that sentence with the mayor and city manager. And in addition, add language that places before considering possible action an item that calls the mayor to recommend or request any council members who wish to move any items so that the items can be voted on if such a movement is considered.
Second.
I don't even know what that was.
Well, that's not motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Tobias. To clarify the motion, there's just going to be a standing agenda item at the beginning before consider and possible action that will state order of agenda, and I will bring forward at that time. Does anyone wish to make motions to reorder the agenda or any item in the agenda? And there can be a motion made at that point in time. So, Councilor Ellison.
Yes, so I actually like this proposal more than my co-sponsor proposal. So I just want to clarify your motion, a friendly amendment to strike the language starting with if all the way down to the end of that sentence, because that would need to go in order for me to support that. So basically you have the format, but I love that this actually codifies a point in the format of the agenda where council members can appeal to the body and say, hey, I would like my agenda item moved up, and then the council will prevail. I actually like this solution. This is a good compromise. So just to clarify, if we could get that language, if a council member wishes, all that stuff needs to go, because that was what my issue was.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, what you're looking for is the mayor and sorry.
Mayor and city manager will follow the following format: presentations, proclamations, number 2, city business, number 3, council business. And then you're also going to add the language of, at the beginning of the meeting, council members have the option to request their item go to the top.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, so it's the mayor and city manager. not and. The mayor and city manager will generally follow the following format: presentations of proclamations, city business, council business, and then strike the rest, and then put at the beginning of the, before considering possible action, there will be a standing item agenda order called agenda order. And at that time, council can make motions to move the agenda order. All right, is that?
Yeah, I think we all, I hope we all kind of, the way I see it playing out is certainly. And if we can stick to that, you know, it's the presentations, proclamations, after doing the minutes, roll call, pledge, all of that, then consent agenda, then it's that item that we're talking about.
Agenda order.
The agenda order, and then the consider possible action, and then council business. If that sticks to that specific order, I can ride with that.
Okay. Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Before can we bring this back just to review so we get a good idea, because I'm marking stuff out. I'd like to get a good idea I'm okay with this. I'm okay moving forward. Before we finalize, can we just lay eyes on it one more time?
Well, I think we've got a pretty good sense of the language.
Okay,
I don't
never
really
mind.
want to bring it back. So, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. All right, so there's a Scrivener error change on an item number 2. It's mayor or city manager, which is just consistent with the rest of the language, not and. Any comments on that? All right.
Are we going to be voting on each individual change?
We'll take all the Scrivener's errors up at once. You know, so I changed council meeting proceedings just because the council staff item is different than council meetings. So I wanted to clarify that for agenda item for D on page 3. On page 4, changing yes to no on motion to adjourn just because it hasn't been our habit. And then at the end on page 5, at the end of point number 3, handling a motion, it's just not the way it's ever been done. The language I struck, whenever a motion, a second is made, I call the motion, call the second, and then ask for further comments. So generally, I don't give the floor immediately back to whoever made the motion, and that includes the mayor. Well, it's reopened up for discussion. So I struck that to be consistent with the way that we always do it. Calling the question is really more a point of clarification. The mayor does have the ability to interrupt the speaker per parliamentary procedure, but this just, to call the question, but this just codifies that the mayor can do that in the order. Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Can you point me to that? Because calling the question is only for people who have the floor. So because it looks like the point of order, you can interrupt, but calling the question is for those who have the floor.
Well, the point of order actually can't be brought forward unless it is as it relates to the item at hand.
Right, but you can interrupt for that. For the point, that's what I'm saying. For the point of
right.
order, you can interrupt, but for calling the question, you have to have the floor.
Right, you do have to have the floor, but the mayor can take the floor. The mayor or the chair can take the floor at any time. And that's just the way that it works. So,
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that at all, because that happened to me today.
I know.
And it wasn't supposed to, now that I look at the calling the question, since I have the floor. And it's not a good feeling to get interrupted while you're in the middle of your conversation. So I would like to see that stricken.
All right.
And anybody who disagrees, I'd be glad to call the question while they're talking.
I think you may have made my argument for me there, but I'm not sure. Is there a discussion on that item in particular? All right. Based on the next item, it's just grammatical changes and consider on point 7 and point 8. And then I'm trying to get down to, all right, so the next big item is decorum. So what's that? Right, here's the good stuff, decorum. So on point number 2, no council member shall conduct themselves in a professional manner. No council member shall indulge in personalities, use language publicly offensive, or use language tending to hold a member of the city council, and I added or staff up to contempt. and that council members shall not be permitted to accuse expressly or implied another council member or staff of violating ethics or statutory laws publicly during a council meeting, nor shall council members be permitted to place items on the agenda to that effect. This section applies to the mayor, all staff, and all council members. So to a couple points of clarity, to make sure that I'm being clear, this is not to prevent council members from having strong opinions about any number of things, like, for example, wanting to make statements about our expense policy, for example, comes forward. That's all of those kind of things are in bounds. What should not be in bounds, as I see it, is to make an accusation that implies an ethics violation has occurred or state law has been broken, because this court is not commissioned per the charter to adjudicate such accusations. We have a body in place for that. If there is a belief that an ethics violation has occurred, or something like fraud has been committed, there is a process that we already have in place with an attorney who we have hired to handle that, and an entire appointed board in place to also, like I said, to adjudicate that. So the ethics violation process is really good because it gives the accused the ability to have 14 days to file a response and then be heard in a neutral setting. So there have been times of recent where accusations that were very close to, and if not outright made from this dais, implying that or accusing other council members or the mayor or the city manager or others of violating ethics laws, where the person who's receiving that accusation is put on the defense and either has to remain silent or has to try to defend themselves from that accusation immediately. And I don't think that either of those options are fair. And moreover, I don't think that that's what we're here to do. We're here to be passionate. We're here to have opinions. We're here to go through and debate when debate is necessary. And then we're here to handle the business of the city. And I don't think that ethics violations or accusations about ethics violations belong. So that's my spiel. Is there discussion? Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Thank you. Okay, and I just want, before I start, I just want to say if an implication is incorrect, there's a process for that too. But as a council, we're aware of the current financial issues as well as other issues currently under investigation, and due to the numerous charter violations from this red line, this verbiage should never cross an elected official's mind, much less be placed on the agenda for consideration. The city's charter tasks council with very specific responsibilities, which we are bound to by law. By limiting our ability to do our job is unfair to our residents. The charter and the oath we took when we and the charter and the oath we took when we were sworn in. The following are charter conflicts I found with the red line changes in Section D. Article 3, Section 3, meetings of the city's charter states that a council member may require any item related to city business to be placed on the agenda for which notice may be given. If council votes to allow prohibiting subjects relevant to the city business to be placed on the agenda or discussed on the dais, this would be a direct violation of our city's charter. Article 3, Section 3.05, City Council, judge of its members, states City Council shall have the power to punish members for disorderly conduct. This includes misdemeanors involving moral turpitude, which the charter defines as dishonesty, fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, deliberate violence, or that reflect adversely on a member's dishonest and trustworthiness. This verbiage proposed in this rule change would directly hinder the council from such discussions. Section 3.06, quorum and attendance. No action of the council shall be valid or binding unless in an open meeting with a quorum present. How could council fulfill its obligations as judges of its members, as referenced in Section 3.05 of the Charter, if we are unable to discuss possible violations on the dais, which discussion requires placement on the agenda? Section 4.03B of the city's charter entitled the City Council states, Council is to ensure enforcement of provisions of the charter and the ordinances of the city and compliance with policies and resolutions. If council is limited on what city business they are allowed to place on the agenda, how could council fulfill its obligation to enforce provisions of the city's policies and ordinances, or to enforce Section 4.03M, which requires council to make investigations into municipal affairs? When touring the College Station Police Department last year, I noticed a quote on their wall, which reads, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." By allowing this verbiage to be added to our rules of council, we are not only censoring each other, which is normally prohibited in government unless otherwise voted on, but we are supporting the actions of those who may want to cover up their unethical behavior. State Representative Joe Moody said it best when he stated, "These records belong to the public. Government transparency is government transparency, even when it's not pretty." I yield the floor.
The only point of clarification I want to make is that it is not a violation of Section 3.05 of the Charter for the rules of council to clarify the requirement per the Charter that council members may place any item before. Rules of council are intended to expound upon that. For example, the rules state that no council member can place more than 3 items before the agenda, in which case if a council member requested a 4th, it would be denied, and that is not a provision that the city charter would allow for. And the same argument could be made that by placing a 4th item or denying a 4th item, you are violating the charter, and that's not the case. So the rules of council do prohibit or do afford us the ability to determine our own proceedings, and as it was stated, we are a judge of our members, and so it's just that simple. So is there further discussion? Councilor Ellison.
So I certainly understand the council members' concerns about holding fellow council members accountable, and you know that is one of our charges. You know, but reading through this, I can't help but think of one particular time where there was an accusation made on this dais that I felt was completely out of bounds, and that was that there were essentially statutory laws broken, and you can't even do that in the U.S. Congress. There are limitations on what they can even say against other U.S. representatives and senators. There are rules in place. You can't just make blatant accusations about your fellow members of Congress and senators speaking at the podium. So there is precedent at other levels of government where this is the case. And so if there is an action that is taken by any member of this council, we should hold them accountable through the channels that are provided at our disposal. So, you know, I feel like that something is warranted here to do this. We can certainly debate the language if we want to, but I do feel like some things have gotten out of hand as far as accusations from this dais without any kind of proof, with any kind of backing of that in order to reinforce that accusation made. And I just don't think that's fair to this council. Certainly things can get passionate up here and how we feel about things, but accusations that are baseless and you would not take to the Ethics Commission with that accusation, I think are unfair to this entire body. And so those are just my comments in regards to that.
Is there further discussion? Councilmember Parsley.
I feel like as long as we are allowed, I'm not down with like putting people on the spot, bringing them in front, and just accusing them. But as long as we are allowed to discuss that there is an issue, no matter what the issue is. Maybe something ethical is being brought up, or something that is going on within council. As long as we are not maybe naming, saying there is a situation, a council member is doing so and so, and we need to discuss it. But we are not saying it is Councilmember Flores Creel or something like that.
That would be allowed under this provision. So
it will be allowed.
It is. The specific says council members shall not be permitted to accuse another council member or staff of violating ethics or statutory law. So it's really clear about what you can't do. You can't say such and such, you've done this, and that is against the law, and that's holding someone up to contempt, which, again, I think this is really mainly just clarifying the rules that are already in place, because the rules we already have in place say that you're not allowed to bring another member of the council up to contempt. And so this just makes it clear that what contempt is, it is an accusation of an ethics or statutory law being violated. Because if it is the belief by any of us or any one of our staff members or the city manager that an ethics violation has occurred or statutory law has been broken, there are proper channels that can go into place that will be made public so that that person can be held accountable, so that our role here is not diminished in any way. We're just agreeing not to use this platform as the method of delivering our opinion, but rather we're following a judicial process.
Okay.
I might have just said we're obligated to.
Obligated,
If
yes,
we
we
feel
are.
that the staff as well, that there is an ethics violation, you're obligated to report that.
And I believe this is intended to protect all of us, all 7 of us,
Then
from such accusations.
the next of that, and it's just like basically one question. When it says you're not permitted to place items on the agenda to that effect, can we place the item on the agenda that talks about the issue without not naming the person?
Your item about the expense reports allowed.
Have no name. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Now I'd like to make a motion to approve item G2.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Parsley, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Rizo, that we approve the changes in agenda, or in the Rules of Council decorum G2. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, we're going to go down to the last one. It's a new section that I'm proposing, council staff communication. There have been lots of discussions about this, so I'm going to read what I'm proposing, and we can have a discussion about it. The following rules shall apply to all council members and the mayor. As per the city charter, point number 1, council shall not give direction to any member of staff, including the city manager, but by majority vote of council at a public meeting. This is almost directly lifted from the city charter. So whether we vote to approve this or not, that is the rule. Agenda point number 2, council shall not make requests for information from anyone except the city manager, the city attorney, city secretary, or an assistant city manager. The request shall be in the form of an email, and in all instances, the city manager shall be copied. Whenever reasonable, appropriate staff shall accommodate and respond to council requests for information in a timely manner. Initial response typically in 1 to 2 business days. To promote fairness and to maintain staff productivity, the city manager may reduce the timeliness of responsiveness to individual council inquiries if the volume and nature of the requests are outliers compared to most council inquiries. That's a lot of verbiage to try to basically get to define who we're allowed to email requests of. And I drew it at the line of department heads. We're not allowed to individually make requests of department heads because each department head has a boss who has a boss. And so our requests can be made to assistant city managers and city secretary, city attorney, and then obviously the city manager himself in this case. The additional language towards the end is basically gives the discretion to the city manager, which the city manager already has, but this just clarifies it, that if in the event that the requests from individual council members are excessive, meaning something like 10 to 15 times the volume of what anyone else is producing, or if the city manager believes that the requests are of such a nature that staff direction from the city manager is being impeded because of the volume of the request, the city manager has the discretion to direct staff not to respond or to not respond in the same time frame as perhaps is being demanded by the individual council member. City manager already has all of those, but this is just my way of trying to get us to agree and give him that comfort, knowing that that's our policy. Point number 3, the council may ask questions of staff during council meetings. Council shall avoid giving direction or assignments to staff during meetings except by motion and majority vote. Staff shall not construe any question or statements from council as direction except by motion and majority vote. This is consistent with point number 1, and it is already the rule that is in place. Point number 4, council may request and attend meetings with staff with or without the city manager present, and this would also include department heads or below, any meeting, but only with the knowledge and express permission of the city manager, meaning the council members cannot make requests to meet with staff without the city manager's knowledge and consent. Again, that is, all of these items are under the purview of the city manager as it is, but I thought it would be good for us to potentially codify them in our rules of council. So is there a discussion on the motion? Councilmember Bradshaw.
I just want to clarify. So in the instance, let's say I'm needing some questions answered regarding something on an agenda item. The protocol per this would be for me to send an email to Scott or one of the assistant city managers, not to the department head or whoever's item is being sponsored, and allow 1 to 2 business days for them to respond?
So I've had thoughts about whether department heads should be in or out. This is the proposal I made. I could see why being able to include department heads would make sense. But as it relates to agenda items, the reason why we moved the agenda posting to Thursday, because it used to be on Friday. You wouldn't get a posted agenda until sometimes Friday at 5, 6, 7 p.m. And then the weekend comes and all staff is unavailable anyway. And so it's not until Monday that staff gets all the emails from council members and they proceed from there, but you just don't get a whole lot of time. Moving the agenda to Thursday gives Friday and then Monday and then the day Tuesday. So there's 3 business days where any question that's posed should be responded to. But generally, my impression has been that staff's responses are quite timely. But what we can't do is expect that if we email someone at 6 p.m. on Friday that they should be expected to respond. If they do, that's a perk, but we just shouldn't have that as an expectation, is my thought. So I'm open to whether we want to keep department heads in, so that way if you're wanting to email the chief or whoever, so long as the rest of it is in place, then I think the department heads would be probably okay with that. Because it's going to go straight to them most likely anyway in most of the cases. So,
Yeah, I think that department heads should absolutely be included as long as we're CCing an assistant city manager, Scott himself.
Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you. So I agree with the point number 1, number 3, and number 4. We are all very aware of how busy Scott is all the time. And I will not complain because he always gets back with me really quick. However, I think that there is an issue delegating and having for us to go to him and then for him to send a message to somebody else that I need this information for an item in the agenda. It is basically what I mentioned to him, micromanaging. If we can just email either the assistant city managers and directors to obtain information, and I will always CC Scott because I have always done it. I believe that is reasonable. I don't want to review the agenda on a Friday night or a Saturday when it's the time that I have off to really dedicate this and request something, and I'm not going to get it until Monday, and I don't have enough time to review that. So, and most of the time he replies to me really quickly, but then we're all gonna put pressure on him by just like messaging him first. And we all know that, I feel like we are being limited to the communication we can have with staff lately. And this is just putting the cherry on top, so.
Okay, so to clarify, point number 2 does not require you to make request of the city manager. It includes you can't make requests from anyone except for the city manager, a city attorney, city secretary, or an assistant city manager, and then we could also still add department heads in, because I just think it's too restrictive unless we add department heads. So you can make your typical customary email if you're wanting to ask, if we add department heads back in, if you want to ask the chief a question about his item, or Leon or Harper, whoever, you just have to CC Scott. But the main section there is that if it's sort of the expectation of council that Scott has the discretion to decide how quickly things get responded to, and so that there needs to be some sort of protection in there in the event that the department heads don't know what to do because they're getting so many requests, or they don't feel comfortable with a certain question or line of questioning, that ultimately the choice there is going to be the city manager who decides how quickly that question gets responded to, what order of what the priorities are for responding, and then whether or not a response is warranted at all or not, because it's not always warranted. It shouldn't be an expectation. It's certainly nowhere in the charter that if we email staff, that staff is required to respond to us. In fact, the charter very much implies that we have but one employee, and we actually don't even have one. We have 1/7 of one employee. And so it is ultimately the city manager who has to make those determinations about how the flow of information between staff and the council, and he already has that expectation. It's his burden, frankly, to manage that flow of information back and forth. I'm just trying to find a way to empower, and as it relates to micromanaging, Mr. Sellers can answer for himself whether he believes that this policy would give him, a better ability to manage the staff, or whether or not the current policy or the way that things are currently going is okay. So if you'd like to respond on that.
Sure, if that's a question. It does actually somewhat line up with our internal direction. And, my only concern to be addressed, and I believe you're addressing it here, is that any, quote, direction always come from the council as a body, and never as an individual to any member of staff, department head, ACM included. So emails that have some sort of directive should just be disallowed. That direction should come here as a body. But otherwise, the procedure we have at the city and have had for many years is council can interact with staff as long as I'm aware of that interaction. And I actually very much appreciate having an ACM and department head aware of that interaction as well if that staff member is underneath them.
Councilor Tobias.
Okay, I'll be brief. It all goes back to that flow chart. It just goes back to your chain of command, the way I look at it. If I've got something that has to do with Parks or Mariana, I'll send her an email. I'm copying Jerry. I'm copying you. If anything that has to do with the chief, I'm copying James. I'm copying you. If anything has to do with economics or anything like that, if I have to do press, I'll copy Amber. I'll copy you. It's just following the chain of command, following that roster that they gave us. And then that way all bases are covered. ACMs are aware, city managers are aware. If Scott can't get back to me, at least somebody will. Okay, it's just plain and simple, real easy. Just follow the flow chart. Okay, and then you can break it down to who are in those areas. Any questions you need, look at it on Friday or Saturday, the agenda items. Ask the question, send it an email, copy your ACM and your city manager, and one of them will get back to you probably maybe Sunday, maybe on Monday morning. You have that at least 24 hours to review, so that way you have your answer ready for Tuesday night's meeting. That's just how I do it.
Councilor Flores-Kale.
Thank you. All right, so I just want to clarify what Section 4.05 states as far as prohibitions. It specifically says that we can't direct, but what it means is that city council shall deal with the administrative and management functions of the city solely through the city manager and other council appointees as appropriate, and shall not give direction to the city manager's subordinates either publicly or privately. So this does not even address basic communication. This addresses managerial and administrative functions as well as direction. So it's kind of concerning for me because I've had major issues over the last 2 weeks with emails not being timely just to get some basic information. And so I'm going to go down these one by one, if I may. So number one, I agree. I don't know if it's necessary since it's in the charter, but I have no arguments with it. For number two, the charter does not outline who council may request information from. So why is this limited? All the aforementioned are defined as officers of the charter, just the same as directors. This will create extra work for the ACMs as well as our city manager. The request will be in the form of an email, which the city manager will resend to the rest of the council, and in all instances, the city manager shall be copied. I agree, 1,000%. I think the city manager should always be CC'd, as well as any kind of update if there is a meeting given. Appropriate staff. So I guess the rest of it is, and in all instances, the city manager shall be copied, period. Appropriate staff, and then my question is define appropriate staff. Shall accommodate and respond to council requests for information. So I think sometimes that could allow for some discriminatory actions, being as there were several of my emails that went days without being answered, even a week. Even after the information was submitted to the city manager, it took an extra couple days to provide to me. The council may ask questions of staff during council meetings. Council shall avoid. I don't think we shall avoid. I think we should just avoid per the charter, giving direction. So I'd like to, instead of council shall avoid, I would just say does not give direction. So again, I feel like that number 3 is repetitive, and it's the same as number 1 and only relevant to staff. Number 4, all council requests to meet and attend meetings with staff will be with the express permission of the manager. That I feel like it could be discriminatory. I have not been able to have a meeting within a timely manner in a couple weeks. And so I feel like I should be able to write Perez and CC Scott and request a meeting, and then Perez would then send a report to Scott telling him about what we discussed. I don't know if all this micromanaging is necessary. I think at some point I was going to just vote yes for this because that's going to put an unduly responsibility on the manager, which will surely set him up to fail. So I think it's a lot.
That's why you were going to vote yes for it? Wow.
Well,
Thanks for showing your colors there.
You're welcome. I was going to see if he could handle it. You just asked him. He said he could do it. So I challenge that. And if you guys want to keep it that way, I say let's do it. However, you may get an email stating that I'm trying to destroy somebody personally, but the truth of the matter is I don't. I try to keep it professional in all of my emails and in all my correspondence. I just wish I could receive that same.
Councilor Ellison. Sorry.
So there's some interesting conversation here. I think that, what I'm also concerned about, and what I see that a lot of this language tries to do is not only protect council, protect Scott, but also to protect staff. You email a staff member. I'm not saying anybody particularly, just council member X. Email staff, certainly CCs appropriate people. They don't get back to you in a timely manner. You say you emailed them Friday evening. I don't expect anybody other than the city manager to respond to me on the weekend. And if they do, major kudos to you. But that is not an expectation because I know that you have been here Monday through Friday doing your thing, and now you have the weekend. That's your time. The only person that I ever expected that from, because he has made that expectation, is Mr. Sellers. So I hear your concern about that, but I don't think that like I said, that expectation has never been from me that if I email a staff member other than Scott on a weekend, that I will get a response from that. Secondly, and then if you don't get a response by emailing a staff member that is not our staff member, then you might get frustrated by that. And then you want to hold that staff member accountable. That's not our role, to hold that staff member accountable. That is only Scott's. And so it kind of goes back to what I was talking about when we were discussing the financial advisor and the bond counsel. There's one person that I hold accountable to anything that happens. If staff member X doesn't do something that is expected of this body, I'm not holding them accountable. It is ultimately the city manager who is accountable for them not meeting the expectation of this council or whatever that is. So I understand what y'all are saying about micromanaging, but this is, I've been a manager, I've dealt with managers, I've read all kinds of leadership management books. This is different because we have one staff member, and that is the only person that we can hold accountable. And so, that is where I just I kind of push back on that narrative of the micromanaging, because at the end of the day, he's the only one. The city manager is the only one we can hold accountable for things not happening. So if he wants to be a part of every little conversation and know everything going on, because ultimately he's the one that will be accountable, I don't have a problem with that, because he will be the one that I will hold accountable when things don't go either my way or with this council's way. So that's what I just want y'all to consider when you're thinking about these arguments, is who really do we get to hold accountable?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. One thing that really sticks out to me is the part that says direction will come from this body. And I want to remember that direction comes from this body when it comes to evaluations of staff, when it comes to directing staff. It has to come from the 7 of us. If one individual council member, I don't care what their title is, be it mayor pro tem, I don't care, is giving direction when it comes to staff, to evaluations, the rest of the council should know about it. And that's where we will hold you accountable moving forward. Because if we implement this holds everybody accountable. It holds the 7 of us accountable. It holds you accountable as well. That's it.
Councilmember Parsley.
I won't take long. So I wanted to say, when I asked information on Friday, I meant the Friday probably before a meeting. So I understand people are I'm not working on the weekend, so I don't want to push that I need an answer immediately. I know I have done it before, and I apologize for that. But can you explain, please, to me how the process is going to look, just so I make sure that I don't mess up? So if I have a question about finances, will I CC you and ask for that information to you, and then the assistant city manager in charge of the finance department and Perez, or just you and the assistant city manager asking for that information? How does that look?
So my
like?
answer would be you would have discretion. So it's assuming we add department heads back in, which I think we should. Then if you had a question that you knew that was just a straight up question for Perez, and we all kind of know whether the question is, simple or whether it's more complicated in the request, you could just email Perez, and according to this, you wouldn't even necessarily have to copy James. You would just have to copy Scott. So like, hey, quick question, this, that, or the other, boom, it's done. He's going to give you a response very quickly. Someone like Perez emails back when he's on vacation. Most of our department heads and assistant city managers and our city manager, not only do they email back on the weekends, even if you don't want them to, they email while they're on vacation. We have a pretty amazing staff in that regard. But so the policy would allow for that. But if you kind of are thinking like, hey, this is a more complicated question, or it's a broader question and staff's going to need some direction on how to respond, I would recommend that you email Scott directly and say, hey, I have this question. So that in this policy, the appropriate staff, the who defines appropriate staff is the city manager, and only the city manager. And it could be the case that he puts the project manager, like with the case of TERS number 2 analysis, someone that you don't not even thinking about to go and to provide a response, or he may give it to Scott, or it may be James, or he may can answer it, and it may be something only he can answer. But that would just generally be the feedback, but it's ultimately up to you, so long as the city manager is included.
So what has changed? Because normally that's the procedure I use. I will
Correct.
CC you and the director and ask my question and just wait for whenever you guys are going to answer. So I don't know exactly what's changing, but.
Not much. It's mainly just clarifying that that is the procedure.
Okay.
And not allow, and that the city manager is the one in charge for any discretion as to how to respond to questions coming from this dais. It's the city manager who.
All right, with that, I would like to make a motion to approve Section J of the item 36.
And add department heads on
Yes.
number 2.
Second.
All right, the motion is made by Councilmember Parsley that we approve Section J and also adding department heads to that list, and a second made by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there discussion on the motion? Scott?
Mayor, I just want to clarify, so in my discretion, if the request does require or will require significant research, significant time, feels like it's in the form of direction, do I have the ability to bring that back to council at the next meeting and discuss that as a whole, as a body?
The point is for you to have discretion on how to respond, period.
Okay. So a response
initial
can be,
response,
I'm going to bring that
typically.
back to council.
Right, it says initial response, and there's a shall there, so initial response in 1 to 2 business days, but you have the discretion on it, the form and function of that response. Councilor Ellison.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that point. One small little friendly thing here, and number 3. So from time to time, there's, for example, earlier today, I almost asked that of our communications manager to, when we have Women's Veterans Day, to make sure we get a post on the agenda. We've all kind of done little things like that where it's like, hey, could you make sure to do that? But it wasn't expressly done in a motion. So number 3 would require something like that to be done in a motion. Is there any way we could add some little bit of language to say if there's no objection from the rest of the council on something, then that would go forward? Or if we're fine with being hardline and saying even something like, hey, can we throw that on the Facebook page? We need to make a motion in order to do that. Just wanted to bring that up because that happens. It happens all the time. All of us have probably done it.
You are correct. It happens with all of us. Little comments or requests, right. Can I this, that, or the other?
Can you send us the presentation from, that's direction, technically.
I hear you, and I don't think that there's a way to, I've considered that for a while. There's no real way to codify. The answer is the city manager takes direction because that's the rule. And if you have a question like that you ask, I don't know, but I just would say, generally speaking, city manager has to be the one. And then outside of that, if the city manager has an issue with a request that was made by a council member, like what you're referencing, then we'll hear about it, I suppose. But outside of that, I just don't really know what else to do.
Yeah, I guess you could just say something like, is that the direction of the council or something like that? Or I don't know if we would be able to do that.
I think it's just going to be discretion. I mean,
Gotcha.
if it's something
that's fair.
It's something that I would do anyway.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily need to be from a council member. Maybe it's a reminder to me that we need something that's, I'll get that direction.
Or maybe ask it in the form of a question versus a directive. Like, is there a way we could get this on the website? Or is there a way we
the
can
reason
get this?
that I wrote that
be
the
a
staff
question.
shall not construe any questions or statements from council as direction is to kind of help with staff to understand that, if something like, hey, can we get a post on Juneteenth next week? Staff is not to construe that as direction. If that request comes and it's something that's like, yeah, I'm going to do that, then it's not to say you can't have informal conversation about topics, but as it relates to direction, city manager is the one. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one last comment. I just want to remind everyone that these changes were made by the council, and these changes could be changed again by council if there's something that's not working. Right. So we always have that prerogative. So just wanted to remind everybody about that.
Okay. Councilman Bradshaw.
I just have a question. Is it possible to go ahead and make a motion to approve this in its entirety with the amended sections?
That'll be next. There'll be one more vote after this to include the scrivener's errors.
Okay.
So, Councilmember Flores-Cale.
Before we make that final vote, can we go back to item 6, because I don't think we took any action at all. And so I would like to make a motion to strike the mayor or chair may interrupt the speaker to call the question. In either case, if the question is properly called.
There's a motion on the floor already for this.
I'm sorry.
And then
So-
if you want
Yes.
to do that, we can. So this is just as it relates to section J. Is there any further discussion on that? And that includes the amendment to add department heads back into it. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So I was going to make a motion for to take all of it, including the amendments that we've made, plus the Scrivener's errors. But if you, Councilmember Flores-Cal, I'll let you make that motion on the
Thank you.
interrupting.
I'd like to make a motion for number 6 to strike the addition, the mayor or chair may interrupt the speaker to call the question. In either case, if the question is properly called, but leave in by another council member. Or leave it, remove the by another council member, because it looks like it doesn't really belong there anyways.
Yeah, it's redundant.
So to deny the first one and approve the second one.
All right, the motion's made to strike the language for point number 6. Is there a second? All right, motion fails.
Second. I'll do it.
All right.
Yep.
All right. The motion is made. There's a second. Is there discussion on that motion?
So I certainly, I'm thinking about this from my position. I understand why this wants to be added, but I'm not a fan of being interrupted, as I'm not a fan of the time limits on this, because I want to get through my thoughts and different things like that. So, that is, I guess I'm just personally thinking about myself. And if I'm at the first time I'm speaking about something and I'm going through some questions, I can certainly understand the frustration from my colleague here on that. And so that's why I'm in support of not adding that to there.
Okay. Well, my only response is two things. Number one is that the mayor or the chair in all boards and commissions does have the ability to interrupt the speaker. And that is a privilege in order to prevent filibustering and also to maintain control of the meeting. And point number 2 is calling the question does not shut the speaker down. It requires a second, and then it's a roll call vote to shut it down. So the shutting down of the speech is at the direction of the majority of council. It's just non-debatable, and it's, and so I would submit that I probably have that right, whether it's added or not. But I was going through it and wanted to clarify. I knew that might be something that wasn't appreciated here, but I do want to clarify that as to why I think that that's something that should be allowed. Not anyone can do it, but the mayor or the chair can. We did have a situation here where that took place literally today in this meeting and was supported by the council. Had it not been, the questioning would have immediately continued, and that's just the process that we would go through. So, but there is a motion, a second. Is there further discussion? All right, so a yay vote strikes it back out. A nay vote leaves it in. Roll call vote. A yay strikes it. So a yay.
Because her motion was to strike it.
Her motion was to strike it. So a yay strikes the addition. A nay leaves it in.
Rizo,
Yay.
Bradshaw,
Nay.
Ellison,
Nay.
Tobias. Parsley. Flores-Kale,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Nay. All right, motion fails 5-2. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rules of council, including Scrivener's errors and all amendments that have been included.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. We do have exec, so we'll go in on just that last item. All right.
Pursuant to Chapter 551 Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary. During this meeting, the city council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics: pending litigation or contemplated litigation to seek the advice of the city attorney pursuant to Section 551.071, cause number 22-0873. That's what I'm doing.
I thought you were reading this.
The State of Texas, XREL 1200 South Old Stagecoach Road, LLC versus City of Kyle, Texas.
I'm going to call this meeting back to order at 11:45. There was no action taken during executive session. There will be action taken now. Make a motion to direct the city attorney to pursue an ethics advisory opinion related to the item that we discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 6-0. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We adjourned.